Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Preservation Awards meeting. This is always a very exciting meeting because it's a happy night. So thank you for coming. May is National Preservation Month. The theme for this year is People Saving Places. In Montclair, the HPC recognizes people like you, historic place savers who pour their time, energy, and resources in protecting places they care about, often without recognition. So tonight we want to recognize you. We aim to change that because it often takes individuals and dedicated teams to deal with historic buildings and the structures and the special care that it takes to deal with them. The aim of the Preservation Awards is to raise awareness of Montclair's unique architectural character and to encourage the continued preservation of its historic integrity. I'd like to thank the committee who worked with me, which are Michael Grant and Steve Rooney. They are not here. Steve isn't here tonight. And also I'd like to thank our secretary, Tommy Sibilia, who works in the planning department. He's the one that contacted everybody. So tonight we have three types of awards. The first one is called Bricks and Mortar. And Bricks and Mortar Award recognizes excellence in the preservation and restoration of historic buildings, interpretation of architectural features, and compatible new design in new construction, and adaptive reuse of historic structures. Judging standards include architectural integrity and compatibility, successful adaptation or continued use of a historic structure, quality of construction, craftsmanship, and/or technical excellence. All nominated projects must be located in Montclair and must have been completed between January 1st, 2022 and December 31st, 2022. And I'd just like to know, this year we're live, obviously. Last year we were virtual, so there's a few people on the podium that haven't actually spoken to this award or this evening. The next award is the Preservation Service Award. And this award recognizes outstanding achievement and support for furthering the aims of historic preservation in Montclair, including research, development, planning, advocacy, and local community leadership. Individuals, businesses, and organizations are eligible. All nominated individuals must live or work in Montclair. All nominated businesses and organizations must be primarily in Montclair, and we judge it on what has been done since December 31st, 2022. Now, Preservation List of the Year. This award recognizes extraordinary contributions to the better understanding of the township's history and to the preservation of Montclair's historic architectural fabric. The individual will be recognized for furthering public education of the town's history and promoting its historic preservation through major projects, undertakings, offices, or positions held, and the duration of the nominee's significant accomplishments. So what we're going to do is Tommy has projected the award buildings up on the screen, and we'll start with the Bricks and Mortar Award, which is being presented to 17 Watchung Plaza, which is a restoration of the National Bank on Watchung Plaza. And this was a combined effort of the Bravitas Group, and with Paul Sionis as architect, Jack Finn, and RHG Architecture and Design, and the current occupant of the building is Montclair Speech Therapy, Laura Kaplan-Colin and Ben Colon. So I'd just like to note that the Bravitas Group has been a company that has really done great jobs with banks on Bloomfield Avenue, not only in Montclair but also in Caldwell. And Paul Sionis, as the architect, was not able to be with us tonight, but he did send a note to me earlier today. And I'd just like to read just a little bit of it. He says, "I'm very appreciative of receiving the Bricks and Mortar Award for our project known as the National at Watchung Plaza. It's a great project that we're very proud of. Rick Jambalowski of our office will be in attendance. Rick was the project architect and will represent our firm." So the Sionis Architectural Group, this is their 7th Bricks and Mortar Award to date. They've also received awards for Hillside Square, the George, the former inspection station, 254 Park Street, and 2 sustainable sanctuary home projects on Plymouth Street and 111 Grove Street. And he says that they're doing their best to win a few more. Thank you. It is an honor. I wish I could be there. So having said that, I'd like to invite the people that I mentioned to accept the award. Is anyone here from Paul's office? Great. Can you take a picture? Yeah. All right. Okay, so Jack. Right?
I'm Rick.
Rick.
No,
Oh, you're
you're-
Rick. Sorry.
Jack with the hat back there.
Okay. Oh, okay. So we have 5. So
Gravitas.
Oh, Bravitas. Oh,
Yeah.
so you're
Brian,
Bob's.
so, yeah.
You're Bob's son.
Correct.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you.
I've known Bob, and then Jack. Yes.
Thank you.
You and
RHG.
Okay. Oh no. Sorry.
Oh, thank you.
And you're with Jack. Okay. And then some.
So,
We can give it to the
Yeah.
tenant. We can
Yep.
give it to
Oh,
Montclair
yeah.
Speech.
Okay,
Yeah.
if you would.
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, so if you just kind of squish in. Okay, we'll take a picture for posterity. How's that?
Yeah, you're good. I trust you.
Okay, great, thank you.
Great, thank you very
Just
much.
Thank you. If anybody wants to say a few words, you can, or just sit down, but thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Next one is 56 Park Street. Great. Okay, this is 56 Park Street, the William H. Conley and Company building. This has been an ongoing project, and I think it's really a labor of love. And I have to say that this company has been in Montclair, I'm going to tear up, for a long time. Bill Conley recently passed away, but he was the inspiration behind the restoration of the building. And I know you can. This is the finished project, but it was interesting to go by every day and see the scaffold that was up. They did major work on the windows. They were able to conserve the windows with the rounded glass windows. That's very, very important. There was foundation work that needed to be done on the foundation on the brownstone, as you can see, and there was also a lot of carpentry work that had to be done on the porte cochere, including the columns and some of the ceiling on top of the porch. So, and I have to say that I think it's been a great project, and we're very glad that you still remain in Montclair. So, who's here from the Conley family? Is anyone, Jimmy here, or? No, okay, no. Well, we'll save these for them. Like I said, it's been a company that's been in Montclair a long time, and in fact, my grandfather and my father both took out their insurance from Old Man Conley, so it's great to. Oh, it's a beautiful, beautiful house. Yeah, and all the history is on our website, the architect and who it was built for, and the everything. So we will now continue on with the next Bricks and Mortar Award, and I'm going to invite Jerry up to the podium. Oh, are they? Oh. So before we move on, is David Green here, or? Oh, come on up. I'm sorry, when I said anybody from the Conley Project, you should have come up. And the Makata. Oh, I'm sorry. Makata Painting? No, okay. So thank you very much.
Oh, you're very welcome.
It was really a wonderful project, and it was
Thank
so
you.
interesting to see it ongoing. It was
Thank
great.
you, I appreciate that. It's, it's something that really needs to be done more of, that more historical places do need to be saved.
Exactly.
There is no reason to take a thing of beauty
Right.
and tear it down for no other reason than making a few dollars, right? I mean, Jim could have just said, okay, let's put in rectangular windows instead of doing these curved windows. But he and his mother decided that, no, the historical value of the house was in the fact that it had curved windows. So they asked me to build them. So I did.
But thank you.
Very welcome. Take care.
Did you take a picture? You took a picture. You want to take a picture? All right. All right, now, Jerry, would you please come up for, here we go.
That's the important thing.
Yeah. And Jerry, Mr. Sweeney will take over for 61 South Fullerton. Okay.
Good evening. Thank you all for coming. It's a pleasure for me to give this award. It's the historic preservation that's given it. This building, it's a commercial building. We're looking at a build-out of what a tenant has done to really upgrade the building. When we talk about historic preservation, we normally focus on the exterior. This shows you the exterior. But having visited there today, I visited before it was upgraded. It's not the same. It is an absolutely exciting place, and it adds new life and sustainability, in my view, to the building, to the area, and to the notion of historic preservation. In commercial buildings, probably the same in residential buildings, it's really a cooperative relationship between the owner of the building. The owner is here, Nancy. I met her today, Nancy Sutherland, and the tenant, the contractor, and I assume there was an architect involved, but it's not mentioned. But I have to say, everyone has a part. The owner has to have a vision. The tenant and the business occupied has a vision and a commitment. And they also have to have the right contractor and you put it all together. It builds on the past, saves a historic building, and sets it for success for the future. So the award, it recognizes those who played an important part. And it really thanks them because it's essential that everyone play their part. Anyway, I have to get to the names. The people, Nancy Sutherland is the owner. She's over here. The business owner and tenant is Jonathan Eckerberry. Is Jonathan here? Okay, well, I would say I had some of Jonathan's coffee today, so in part I have to say that's probably still in my system. The contractor is Ed Lamson, restoration contractor. Is he? Ed, nice to see you. So I have to say we're seeing the exterior. The exterior is what we focus on here. That when you go by there, it really highlights the building. The rest of the building is interesting. It has it's the kind of building that has all kinds of eclectic businesses. There's the variety store that Nancy runs. Is probably, I don't know if that's been around since the 1950s. I think I recognize some stuff in the shop from that era, but it has that wonderful. But there's an antique store that has stuff probably predating the building. All of it's fun. So I want you to, not only for the people who are here, recognize the building, go over and look inside, look around the whole building, because the whole building is really wonderful, but the inside is so astounding. I don't know if you know about it, but there's I never understood the name paper plane, but you go in there, there's a row of seats. It looks like you're sitting in an airplane. And I said, wow, and all these people are sitting in an airplane. Designs on the wall, flowers, colors. I have to say, this is the kind of development that really makes a difference for the building and for the town. So I think I can all just bring you up so I don't have to spend more time talking, and no one wants to hear the talk, but I am so enthused. I met Nancy Sutherland today. I'm going to meet Ed Lamson when he comes up here. And Nancy has lots of stories all about history, so if you want to know about the building, you want to know about Montclair, you want to know who used to be in that building, which was the site of not only one of the original frozen food operations, but was one of the first ShopRites. I don't know if anyone shops at ShopRite, or we all in the area. So it really has historic, it's a beautiful building. And thank you for taking care of it. Ed, nice to meet you. Thank you for building it out. Nancy, thank you for, and someone you'll extend to Jonathan Eckerberry.
I'm kind of surprised he's not here.
Yeah, I thought he was coming.
He's,
My son's supposed to be here, but he's waiting for the
yeah, he's
UPS
probably
driver.
worried about bringing enough coffee for everyone here. The coffee is good too, so anyway, I want to thank you. I have an awards here. Nancy, this is Nancy and Chris. I guess Chris isn't here. Ed, thank you much. And what do we do about it? Jonathan's not here. Should we?
Well, we'll give it to him.
We'll get it.
Well, she's gonna see him.
Yes, all right.
One of us will see him.
Would you take that?
See him every
Okay.
day.
Okay, so come on, we'll stand together and thank you.
Come on now.
Thanks,
Okay,
Tommy.
thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Nice meeting. I'll come over to get some more stories. I don't know where I get your stories.
There, he's always
There,
there.
I'm always there.
Oh, okay.
And you probably know my uncle, Dan Bush.
What?
You probably know my uncle, Dan Bush.
Oh, yes, I think so. So, okay, but I don't remember, your name is familiar, but anyway, we have other people
I did the
now.
other store.
Huh?
I did the other store.
Oh. Which story?
The one around the corner.
Oh, okay. I have, by the way, I have a lot of doorknobs from the antique store, so. So I have a connection. Okay, thank you all.
Thanks again,
Thank you,
Jerry.
Jerry. Thank you very much. Thank you. Great job. Next up for bricks and mortar is the mixed-use building at 369 to 373 Bloomfield Avenue. You might remember it as the former Diva Lounge. It's undergone quite a transformation, and it looks great now. It has two commercial spaces in the front. The architect, John Reimnitz, who's also a member of the commission, who's not here tonight, but there's somebody from his office who'll be accepting the award. And Steve Plochner is here, who is the owner of the building. And not only does the facade on Bluefield Avenue look great, but the facade going down on Willow looks fabulous as well. There were some considerations and some problems with that, but I think it was resolved really great. Industrially, looks like a part of the building and fits in really great with the the vibe of the Bloomfield Avenue district. So with that, I'm going to invite Nick to come up and present the award.
So the renovation of the facade of the Diva Lounge facade enhanced our main street by simply but richly with a variety of patterns of raised brick that provide both interest and texture, complementing other historical buildings on Bloomfield Avenue. The attached cement block building facing North Willow was restored for reuse with the use of metalwork windows and balconies and industrial lighting to provide a modern industrial look that fits in perfectly with buildings that could be 100 years old on either side of it. If our nominees would come up, we have awards for Mr. Stephen Plofker and the Office of Architect John Remnitz.
So I wanted to add something to it. That improvement radically improved the neighborhood, the corner, and we restored it from a, what was essentially a stucco facade to brick, which is really a beautiful building, a beautiful facade. Thank you.
Next up, we have the Preservationist of the Year and the Preservation Service Award. Is anyone here from, is Miss Holloway here? No, okay. Or anybody from the Friends of Howe House? It doesn't appear. All right, maybe there was a mistake in communication, I don't know what, but I'm going to invite Mr. Graham up to read the the people who have the awardees and also the significance of the award, because it's a very, very significant award.
Yeah, the next two awards relate to such a remarkable piece of history, Montclair history, and they are for a very impressive individual and very impressive organization, very important to our community. So I think it's important to read the Montclair History Center's nominating reports for these two individuals, for this individual in this group. And they state, with fondness and respect, the Montclair History Center nominates Betty Holloway for the 2023 Preservationist of the Year Award. Betty has researched, documented, and shared numerous facets of Montclair's African American history over many years. This year, her work is focused on the history and legacy of former enslaved person James Howe and the James Howe House at 369 Claremont Avenue. Betty is a member of the board of the Friends of the Howe House. With passion and diligence, this group overcame daunting challenges to purchase the Howe House and property and begin their mission to convert it into a monument to and archive of local and national African American history. Working individually and as part of the Friends of the Howe House Research Committee, Betty has extensively researched the history of the James Howe House to understand the changes of ownership and development of property records for James, his wife Susan, and their children James Henry Howe and Mary Oliver. Betty continues to uncover resources and documentation to better understand the Howe family and their relationship to the property of 369 Claremont Avenue. In addition to her work on the research committee of the Friends of the Howe House, she has researched her own family genealogy and worked with the Montclair African American Genealogy Group, as well as the St. Mark's United Methodist Church Archives Project. Extensively researched Alice Hu Foster, the groundbreaking founder of Montclair's YWCA, and her family. Through exacting research, Betty uncovered the story of the entrepreneurial family which moved to Montclair from Virginia in 1874 during the Great Migration and owned several successful businesses, including a news dealer business on Bloomfield Avenue. In 2017, Betty Holloway and Barbara Sanders Harris published a historical document called the St. Mark's UMC Church History and Art. In 2019, with the Montclair African American Heritage Foundation, Betty conducted a historical trolley tour of the African American community in Montclair. This body of work is notable for shedding light onto the accomplishments and impact of the black community in Montclair. We consider Betty's work, including her persistence to uncover difficult-to-find information, commitment to evidence-based research, excellent writing, and engaging and informative communication of her findings, worthy of individual spotlight and recognition as Preservationist of the Year. I thought that was remarkable. So the second award for Preservation Service, the Preservation Service Award, the Montclair History Center had this to say about Friends of the Howe House. The importance of the James Howe House has been brought into focus more than ever this past year through the grassroots efforts of the Friends of the Howe House organization. With passion and diligence, this group overcame daunting challenges to purchase the home and property. Now, they are on their way to creating a monument to and archive of local and national African American history and a place to further the contemporary needs of racial justice. It is the Montclair History Center's pleasure to nominate the Friends of the Howe House organization for a 2023 Preservation Service Award. While those on the Montclair Township Historic Preservation Commission may be aware of the history of the small clapboard home at 369 Claremont Avenue, built circa 1780 as well as its significance as the home of James Howe, the first freed enslaved person in Montclair, many in our community are unaware of this important site. Given the swiftness with which the Friends of the Howe House has mustered to purchase the home when it became available in 2022, as well as the awareness they have already raised about the home, its importance, and their plans and vision for it, we believe that this important site will not only be known locally, but far wider as their plans evolve. As summarized from the Friends of the Howe House website, the home is significant in part because one of the oldest structures in Montclair, dating to the Revolutionary era, this house helps tell the story of freedom and slavery, the development of a black community, and also the founding of Montclair as a town. James Howe worked as an enslaved man for Major Nathaniel Crane in the early 1800s. After over a decade of servitude, Crane manumitted Howe, ending his enslavement. In his 1831 testament and last will, Crane left Howe the house, $400, and approximately 6 acres of land. Howe used the home and the property to support his family, and there is evidence to suggest that a small black community developed around the James Howe House. We believe the Friends of the Howe House is very deserving of the 2023 HBC Preservation Service Award, and we thank you for considering it. So thank you. And we're proud to award both of them these awards. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you everyone for coming. That concludes our award ceremony. Look forward to next year to see work that's going on in the town. It doesn't have to be something that comes before the commission. It's always even more rewarding when you're driving around town and you see something that jumps out at you. So again, thank you very much. Continue the good work. As I always say, we're not here just saving buildings, but the people, the stories that actually inhabited those buildings, which are so much a part of our history in this township. And as we just noted, the variety of awards, from commercial to residential turned commercial to a small house on Claremont Avenue, it's very important that we continue to acknowledge and appreciate and show our appreciation to people that are really willing to take on these challenges. So thank you so much for coming. Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the May 11th, 2023 Historic Preservation Commission meeting. Thank you for your patience. We are getting off to a little bit of a late start because we had our Preservation Award ceremony at 7 o'clock. So we and everybody wanted to stay and chat a little bit, but it was very encouraging, and we're very thankful that you were able to that people came, and that there's some people that have stayed in the audience. So this is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Montclair Historic Preservation Commission. Notice has been posted in Town Hall, and it's also been on the website and in newspapers, the Star Ledger, the Herald News, and the Montclair Times. With that, I'm going to ask Mr. Sibilia to call the roll.
Good evening, everybody. Ms. Bennett,
Present.
Mr. Hindman,
Present.
Mr. Graham,
Present.
Mr. Sweeney, Mr. Giuliano,
Present.
Ms. Bauer.
Present.
Is Mr. Connolly?
He had an emergency. He didn't get in
Okay.
touch with you? No, he called me about
Okay.
a few hours
Okay,
ago.
so we'll mark him excused, and then also Mr. Rooney and Mr. Reimnitz are excused this evening.
Right. Okay, thank you, Tommy. First on our agenda is the approval of the minutes from April 13th, 2023. Are there any addendum or changes to the minutes? No? I have one. I would like to have an additional sentence on page 5, perhaps. It was the discussion about the under new business on the Dish Wireless Board of Adjustment referral, only because I asked specifically if this was the only application for dish antenna in the town, and the gentleman said no, that this was the first, that there were going to be others in town. So I think that's important to note. So could you add that, Tommy? Yes. Okay. So with that addition, can I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve as amended?
Second? All in
Second.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And everyone?
Abstain.
You abstain, all right. Committee reports. The revisions committee met to discuss an exposed window at the ground level on the corner of North Fullerton and Bloomfield Avenue. And it's recently, they've done a huge renovation. They've kept the windows. It's turned out really well. But they felt that they needed light into the basement level because that was going to be rented out as commercial space. So they did find that originally there was a window opening, and they opened the window. However, when the revisions committee met, we felt that it was too large of a window, that it looked like an empty eye in this vast sea of concrete. So we asked them to put some mullions in, which they did, they agreed to, and it's come back, and we approved that, correct, Tommy?
Not yet. We're waiting for one detail of that window.
About
still.
the width of it, okay, but that was really the long and short of it.
Correct.
Okay. We had no minor applications during the month, from last month, rather. The grants, just an upgrade on the grant. The grant for the Montclair commuter was not accepted by the state this year, so we're going to have to go forward for next year. I just wanted everybody to know that. We did create last month a subcommittee to revisit the master plan, the historic preservation aspect of the master plan, and it's Steve Rooney and I believe it was John, but we haven't had a chance to meet yet with conflicting schedules. So hopefully we'll be able to set a date for a meeting before the June meeting. And then during that meeting, can we do that virtually, or is that in person with you as well? Or you're the point person, right, from the planning department?
Yeah, that can be virtual. Since it's just the three of you, we can do it. We can do that virtually.
Okay, that would make it easier. Is there any other business for committees, Tommy? I don't think so, but no? Anybody else have any? No. We did have, for education and outreach, as I had mentioned before, we did have our preservation awards tonight, and I've just asked people, the public at large, just be on the lookout for next year for May. May is traditionally Preservation Month. So there's 3 categories. There's bricks and mortar. There is Preservationists of the Year, and then Preservation Service. So just keep that in mind. So with that, we are going forward. Next on the agenda is public comment. Now, this is public comment for general HPC items. If there's a specific comment about the application for 509 Park Street, I would ask you to save your comments until we hear the what the applicant has to say, and then also a history of the building. So, having said that, does anyone wish to make a public comment? No. Okay, public comment then is closed. Old business, the Label Street Factory local nomination. Landmark nomination will be heard. It's been moved to the June 8th meeting. And next is new business, application 2023-12, 509 Park Street. This is total demolition of a detached garage and a planning board subdivision referral. And normally if I'd like you, hi. Okay, so in order to introduce the application, I always do a brief history of the property, but today I put together a brief PowerPoint. So with that, because I think the pictures are very important. I'll scroll through it. But before I begin the pictures, I would just like to say that this is application 2023-12, 509 Park Street, block 2710, lot 29. An application has been filed to the Preservation Commission to demolish a detached garage on the subject property. This review will also include a planning board referral for a subdivision application 2833. So even though there are 2 different things, we are going to hear and discuss the 2 things tonight. Both the demolition of the garage, which we have say over, the HPC, because it's a demolition of a historic piece of historic property, but the referral will be to the planning board. So that, even though it's connected, we will do our referrals after the demolition vote.
So so I understand, are we going to treat them together, or are we going to hear the demo and then evaluate the subdivision separately?
I think we should
in
do
light
it-
of the
I think
determination.
we
Okay.
should do that because the
That'll impact how we
Right.
evaluate. Okay, very good.
So the subject property is located on the east side of Park Street between Buckingham Road and Overlook Road. The property is 1.54 acres in size and contains a 2.5-story single-family detached house with a 2-car garage. A detached garage and swimming pool located in the rear yard. A stone wall with a gate is located along the front property line. The property is heavily landscaped with many mature trees. The property slopes down about 30 feet from the southwest corner to the northeast corner. The property is surrounded by single-family detached lots. So in terms of the history, I'm going to go through a small PowerPoint that I prepared. And okay, what we will look at in terms of the subdivision, I'll read that after in terms of the history, so we're more. But if everyone has a copy of the memorandum that the planning department put together, I think it'd be easier to follow along.
There's a handheld mic next to the computer so that you can.
So, hello? Okay. So normally I present a little piece of history, a history of the property when we discuss things. But today I think that the visuals are really very important to this site. This site is intricately connected with Applegate Farm. Applegate Farm, which is still going concern. And it's interesting, I pulled this off their website. It says Applegate Farm, sweet scoops of the past since 1848. So very interesting piece of history for not only Upper Montclair, but all of Montclair, as it is a thriving concern, and you can't get anywhere near it during the summer. Originally, Applegate Farm was a farm, and a Mr. Julian Tinkham moved to Montclair in 1900, and we're very fortunate to have the photo album of the Tinkham family. And I know that this is in the possession of the owner now. I was lucky to see this when the previous owners had it, because it's been passed down through to the families that have owned the house. So it has the date up on the top, 1915, and when Mr. Tinkham died, his widow was able to track down, or sent it to the occupant at 509 Park Street, so it stayed within the house. So fortunately, the photographs have now been digitalized by the Montclair History Center, so anyone is able to look at it. 509 Park Street is a single-family home, 2.5 stories, as I read. It is I would say it has some shingle style. I couldn't find out who the architect was, but Mr. Conley has written a little bit more about the architectural style. But you can see how it appeared in 1900 on the left when it was finished, and then in 1941. And this is how the facade looks today. In 1941, the house was bought by the Hans Lawrenson family, and Hans Lawrenson was the creator of level door blinds. So Leah lived in this house for almost 20 years, and then after Hans Lawrenson, the creator of level door blinds, and his family left, sold it to Barbara and Paul Volker, who Mr. Volker, he then sold it in 1966 and went to Washington to become Undersecretary of the Treasury. So Paul Volker. Paul Volker, yeah, the Paul Volker. So they, maintained the house and the gardens throughout the years that it existed. Here you can see the house being built. Very fortunate to have these photographs. Here is a picture of the walled garden, which exists today. This is on the south side of the property. You can see, if you're on Park Street, where the woman is, that's the line of Park Street. And then there's this gradation of walls that go down. And here's what it looks today from, on the left, it's overgrown. But I have to say that the brick walls are in fabulous condition. They're actually much better than the brickwork we've had done in our house for 20 years, which has fallen apart. But down on the bottom, that brownstone wall, that's a brownstone wall that was created in 1929, which postdates the walled garden from 1914. So this was a very intimate area with a bench that's still there that's broken, but was planted heavily. And then you could sit on the bench and then look towards the east as the land descended in terraces and looked towards Manhattan. In 1905, the Tinkhams bought Applegate Farm. So the house sits up on the ridge and was connected to the farm before it was subdivided. So the garage in question is the building on the left, which is the garage in question today. It still stands. And the house is on the right. This is actually the back of the house, and you can see the car which I guess pulled out of the garage to the right, and is going down the road, the raised road down to Applegate Farm. Now, of course, that's all filled in. It's all been subdivided, and Fairview Place, I think, is there now. But not only was there a walled garden, but the swimming pool that is there today was really had been created as a lily pond. And the lily pond had brownstone walls and was filled in, and there was a very significant sculpture, which I think I have a picture of, that has disappeared and nobody knows where it is now. But this is the fence, the brownstone fence, that is still in place. It goes across the whole length of Park Street. And on the left, you can see that brownstone column. That is, it's indicated on the, it's indicated on this photo album that those piers actually came from Lambert Farm. They're freestanding piers with a brownstone cap on top. And you can see it there on the right. And they sit on either side of the driveway going into the property. Here's a very good shot of the fence, which looks like it's the same as it is today, painted red. The house, of course, has been altered. The windows are different, and it's white. It's not the dark stained color that you see in the photograph. But the silo here on the left, this is a silo that is made out of the same type of insulated brick that is currently in the garage. And the tree on the right, it says a little notation that this is the tree that gave the name to Applegate Farm, the apple tree on Grove Street. There was a controversy here in the 1920s. The Tinkhams opened a tea garden. They didn't charge for tea, but they invited people in to enjoy the gardens. So, but there was a sign on Park Street that people objected to, and the photograph on the right was actually in the Newark Evening News, and you can see, ladies at lunch or ladies having tea in the garden with the lily pond and the house to the left, and the sculpture spouting water out of it was a significant, or is, if it's still in existence. It was created by Alexander Calder's father, so it's a Art Deco Neat that's sprouting water. But so all of this was interconnected with Applegate Farm. The Tinkhams really were the proprietors of Applegate Farm. And his former life, he was a stockbroker, and he became a gentleman farmer in Montclair. So you can see the, I don't know if there's any pictures of the acres of corn that was being grown. Corn, apples, and cows. That was it. So not only so we have the lily pond, we have the wall garden, and there's also a terrace that goes down to the bottom of the property, wide steps created of brownstone. It says on I think it's this picture, it says on the left that all this brownstone came from a ruin in Montclair. It doesn't say where, it says it was by the Erie Railroad. So a great 1920, 1910 for adaptive reuse, picking up all this brownstone and using it for fences. On the left, you can see a dahlia bed. Now that's actually a terrace that's connected to the pool further behind where they grew dahlias. And if anyone's grown dahlias, you know that they're very picky in their location. The man on the left is Julian Tinkham with his dog Bob, and the conservatory that was built on the off the side of the house to the side of the porch, which exists today. This is a picture, a current picture. And again, I just want to point out that it was heavily altered in 1941 when the Lawrensons bought it. And it was altered or reconfigured in the facade by a postmodernist architect who worked in Montclair by the name of what's his name? Alvarez is his name. Alfonso Alvarez Jr. He was an architect in 1941. He also designed the what we know is the Carvel building on Bellevue Avenue. So very postmodern, 1950s, you could see the change. It's interesting, when I look at this entryway, it's very chinoiserie with that sort of pagoda-type roof. So anyway, that's my little brief history of the property. Okay, so good evening, gentlemen. Would you state your name and your connection to the project, and we'll have Ms. Bauer swear you in?
Of course. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. My name is Michael Piramali. The law firm is Gassion Pamaco, 524 Union Avenue in Belleville. Here tonight on behalf of applicant 509 Park Street LLC and its principal, Nathan Rozen. I have here to my left Michael Shubach. He is the project architect from Petrie Engineering. He's going to testify tonight with regard to the proposed development. We're happy to be sworn in or whatever is next.
Yes.
So, Mr. Shubach, raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you'll provide on this application tonight to the commission will be the truth, all truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Just a brief opening, if I may. We're here tonight in connection with the proposed demolition of a detached garage and subdivision of an existing lot into 3 lots for the construction of a new single-family dwelling on 2 of the newly created lots. Obviously, the existing dwelling is to remain. We do propose the demolition of an existing garage on the structure, existing detached garage. Obviously, that is something that the commission has a say in, and we're certainly interested in hearing the commission's decision on that, and we'll abide by that decision. Should the development proceed as currently proposed, again, the single-family dwelling would remain, and 2 new single-family dwellings would be constructed to the right and the left, facing the existing dwelling on Park Street, which would remain in its current condition. The applicant here tonight, 509 Park Street, came into our firm with the subdivision plan proposed, and after our initial zoning review, we thought it was a good candidate for subdivision. Looking at the tax map, the surrounding properties are similar size to the post-subdivision lots that we proposed, and the lot is oversized for the zone. And the way we looked at it, the subdivision could be accomplished with no variances. As proposed and as before the board, the subdivision does require a single variance, but after much discussion amongst our team, we thought the current design was appropriate, despite that single bulk variance being requested, but we can design this site without any variances being triggered. In any case, at the time we made the application, we were not aware that the property was in any way historic in nature. This is news to us, and that it would require review by the Historic Commission, but the applicant is here tonight and happy to hear any comments that the Historic Commission members may have or their experts may have with regard to the development proposal. So without further delay, I'd like to call our project architect, Michael Shubach. If we need to qualify him, I'm happy to qualify him. Please let me know, but he will describe the subdivision proposed and the development proposed and the architectural style and design of the 2 new dwellings proposed. So should we qualify him, Madam Chair?
Yes, please.
Of course. Mr. Shubach, would you state your name and your business address for the record?
My name is Michael Shubach, S as in Sam, H-U, B as in boy, E-C-K. I'm associated with Petrie Engineering, located at 155 Passaic Avenue in Fairfield, New Jersey.
And would you give the commission the benefit of your education and your experience before historic commissions and planning boards, zoning boards in the state of New Jersey?
Certainly. I graduated from NJIT, which we like to call the New Jersey School of Architecture. It's part of NJIT. In 1984 with a Bachelor's of Architecture. I am a licensed architect in the state of New Jersey, and my license is in good standing. I have been accepted by planning boards and zoning boards as an expert in the field of architecture in the past, and most recently in West Orange and Cedar Grove, but I have never appeared before this commission and or Montclair, anything. So I'm sort of new up in here. I've been in the audience, but never at this table.
Madam Chair, I would move to accept Mr. Shubach as an expert in the field of architecture.
Thank you.
Yes, do we have to?
Oh, no, you can.
You can just roll on that.
Okay. Yes.
Okay.
So moved.
Thank you so much. Mr. Shubach, would you give us a brief overview of what are we doing here today and why we are before this commission?
I'd love to. Do you have the USB drive?
We don't need it. We're gonna, what would you like to show?
When I ask for it, I just want to know.
Yeah.
I just
Gentlemen-
ask you?
Could we? Yeah.
Gentlemen, before we proceed, I just want to clarify something. So, Chair, we were going to look at the garage first and the subdivision separately. So this presentation should solely focus on the garage? Is that how we want to proceed?
Yes.
Madam Chair, I'd prefer to just give our whole overview first, and when we do the vote, if you want to vote separately on the demolition permit, let's vote separately on the demolition permit, and then we can move forward and vote. But it just seems easier.
Well, they're so interconnected.
Do you have your?
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's why we'd like to present in one fell swoop and the vote separately.
Right, they're so interconnected. I think we
Okay.
should do that, yeah. That was my reasoning with doing the history.
Agreed. And we have some exhibits. We are going to show them on the screen, but we would like to hand them out to the commission members as well.
Are these new?
They are new,
In
yes,
addition
correct.
to, okay, what are they?
One is the survey.
Which I think we did submit.
We did submit as part of the application for the planning. The next one is a figure that includes the survey with the subdivision very boldly highlighted where each one of the lines goes. And then the third one is very much the pictures that you showed already, but there's additional pictures in that as well. But
Okay, I just wanted to see.
So I'm going to ask that
Do we mark?
everything that, yes, everything has to be marked, so you should A1 through whatever with today's date on the bottom, and then we'll take a copy.
Let's do
And-
A1, A2,
or
A3.
Actually,
Okay.
you should have copies for us, unless they're just going to go up on the screen.
They are going to go up on the
Okay.
screen, but we're going to mark them A1, A2, and A3. And just for the record, Mr.
Okay.
Shubach, would you describe what A1, A2, and A3 is?
certainly, A1 is the survey that was part of the application. A2, we have labeled as Figure 1, but the title is Survey Layout and Demolition Figure, and it shows the survey along with a graphic representation of the subdivision and some of the items on the site that are not part of the garage, but part that would have to be modified for the subdivision.
If you were to summarize that for the report, what would you summarize that as?
A
Colorized version of
colorized
this.
version of the site and the survey.
Right, good, thank you.
And then the last one, A3, Figure 2, is just photographs.
Of the
Of
existing
the-
property and historic nature of the property?
It is of the historic picture of the garage and the existing garage as it exists today.
That's perfect.
Thank you.
So just to be clear, are there 3 documents or 3
There's just 3 pages.
3 pages of the same document?
I didn't know if we wanted to include them separately or discuss them separately, but we have, we can say refer to as A3 instead of saying Figure 2 of
Okay.
A1.
Madam Chair, may we proceed?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
May we proceed?
Yes, please.
Of course. Mr. Shubach, please continue.
Okay.
Why are we before the commission here today?
We're here today because the application that is before the Montclair Planning Board to subdivide Lot 29 in Block 2710, commonly known as 509 Park Street. This property was excluded from the architectural survey performed by the commission in 2021 and 2022, but is located across the street from an area that has been designated as historic by the HPC, and properties in that area are required to appear before this commission.
And could you describe the property in its existing condition?
Certainly, and what we have, I'm going to be referring to the survey that's up on the screen now. As previously stated, the subject property is Lot 29 in Block 2710, which is an oversized lot for the area. Looking at the survey that's on the screen, Park Street runs north to south, and in this case, on the left of the survey is south, and to the right of the survey is north. The subject property is on the easterly side of Park, so it appears on, this is Park Street, it's on the easterly side of Park, and approximately 480 feet south of Overlook Road and directly across from where Glenwood Road intersects with Park Street to the west. The site is 1.532 acres and is trapezoidal in shape, with roughly 320 feet of frontage along Park Street. The southerly sideline, as you face the property, is approximately, or it is 232.10 feet. The rear lot line, or easterly side of the lot, is 315.6 feet. The length of the northerly lot line is 189.7 in length. As mentioned, and you stole all my thunder, Madam Chair, and everything I'm going to say you already said tonight. The site slopes roughly 30 feet from the frontage along Park Street to the rear lot line that abuts the properties that were created from a prior subdivision of the original Applegate Farm property owned by Mr. Tinkham himself. There is a 2.5-story single-family dwelling centered centered in the center of the property and is in the front half of the property along Park Street. There are remnants of a walled garden along Park Street where nearly a 5-foot masonry wall on the interior screening the view from the street with an open side facing the interior of the property. There are terraced areas containing gardens and a pool to the immediate rear. This is the rear of the property. To the rear of the house, there's a 2-car detached garage in the rear corner of the lot as well. And that's going to be part of the discussion here. It's located in the lower right corner and as you look at this particular exhibit. If we could go to, no, go ahead.
Yeah, if we could go to the subdivision exhibit.
Thank you.
Maybe the second one. And this is the colorized version of the subdivision that was marked as A2. Perfect. Mr. Shubach, would you describe the subdivision as proposed?
Certainly. The subdivision before the planning board will create 2 new lots of conforming width along the northerly side, which is to the right of the screen, and the southerly lot lines of the original lot on the left-hand side of the screen. It will also create a 3rd lot from the balance of the original lot 29, which is in the center of between the 2 newly created lots. The lot will contain the existing house and gardens and the pool to the immediate side and rear. The proposed lot containing the existing house does not conform with the ordinance of 65% from the maximum building width to lot width ratio, as we are proposing 67.9%. While this will require an approval of a variance, we wanted to be sensitive to the existing structure and not propose any modifications in order to bring the lot into conformity. If we wanted to, the modifications would have been to modify the attached garage, and that is located on the right-hand side of the lot. It's that square right here. We would modify the garage and reduce it by 4.65 feet in order to bring that lot into conformity. It didn't seem necessary to lop off 4.5 feet just to get a variance to make the house look different.
And would you describe how the subdivision will impact the existing site?
Do you want, we're still on here? We're still here.
Well, please.
It's okay. Well, I'm going to continue.
Continue.
We'll continue. We believe the design of the subdivision balances the desire to develop the site and protect the existing house while preserving the character of the grounds for years to come. Okay.
Could you describe how the subdivision will impact the existing site?
Certainly. All right. We understand that subdivision will disrupt some of the former gardens, and we will require modification of the small portions of the wall along the front of Park Street, which is partially located in the public right-of-way as it exists right now. Those would require to provide access through, for driveways through the wall, and we're just showing them in green, located here and here. The width of those walls and the modification of them will depend on the width of the driveway that gets put into place, and the hope is to reuse the stone that's removed to create pilasters or piles, just to keep with the style that's already there. The conceptual design does not modify the wall along the front of the existing house, including the gate post from the existing driveway from the Lambert farm and the pedestrian gate leading to the front door, as was described earlier. The proposed driveway locations and the houses are conceptual in nature to demonstrate that the newly created lots could be developed and remain in conformity with your ordinances. They are not indicative of what will be constructed, but conceptual in nature, and we anticipate returning to this commission for review of those structures themselves.
Now, what is the overall condition of the site now, the dwelling and the garage, the detached garage, that's most important to this commission?
Okay. The dwelling on this site appears to be in relatively good condition given when it was built. It appears to have been well maintained over the years, and the current owner is maintaining it as we speak. There are the remnants of the former garden to the south of the dwelling. This area is being reclaimed by nature, and the pictures demonstrated that today it's very well overgrown with significant number of large volunteer trees. The perimeter masonry wall has open vertical cracks in some locations, which will deteriorate more over time with water getting in, infiltrating. Immediately surrounding the dwelling is the landscaping and hardscaping include a pool that appears to have been maintained up until recently. To the north of the dwelling, in an area of the property that does not appear to have any formal landscaping, this portion of the lot contains a two-car detached garage with a roof that is in disrepair. In general, the site immediately around the dwelling is in good condition, but the landscaping and hardscaping become significantly overgrown and in disrepair the further you get away from the dwelling.
And specifically with regard to the detached garage.
Certainly, if we could go to the next exhibit. Thank you. Thank you. All right, thank you very much. We're here today to review the request to remove the existing detached garage located in the northeasterly corner of the proposed lot 29.01. As outlined in the application for total demolition, the owner is willing to give the structure away, but based on the construction method used, our structural group has determined that it is not practical to do so. The exhibit that is here, and I can just do quickly, the picture on the upper left, we've seen that already this evening. That scrapbook that was available was key in describing the entire property. So the upper left is the picture from 1914, where the family is very happy to get their new Buick. The lower left is a picture as the garage exists today from a very similar vantage point. You're good. I'll go through that, but those two pictures we'll talk to right now. As outlined in the application for demolition, the owner is willing to give it away. The existing detached garage was constructed in 1914 and is located in the northeasterly corner of the existing Lot 29 and proposed Lot 29.01. Historic images show, and we're showing them here, that the existing retaining walls at the front of the garage, and we showed that on A2. There's two walls out in front of the garage, and you mentioned it also in the picture that you showed where the car is running along the roadway. Those two walls, I believe, are the walls that connected to that roadway, and then they were cut and opened, or the roadway went away. So that was critical, that those are remnants of that road as well. Interesting that the connection to the garage, I think, was more from Applegate Farms and less from Park Street. Yeah. The existing detached garage was constructed in 1914. Historic images show the existing retaining walls that we just mentioned, but it passes through the Applegate Farm that fronted on Grove Street as it does today. The structure has an addition on the easterly side that is not original to the garage, and you can see that in the lower left-hand picture. Off to the right, there's a white addition where you don't see it, where it would be right behind the new Buick. And you can really tell that it's different. You can see it better in the exhibits that you have in your hand. But the wall, the picture on the right-hand side, the second picture down on the right, shows the inside of the addition, and then a closer picture showing the CMU, more modern CMU, suggesting that it was built after 1950. And we'll talk about the terracotta structural tiles in a moment, because those went out of vogue in around 1950. So that's where they was after 1950 or before. There's a soffit on all four sides of the structure, and the gabled roof slopes from each side of the common point to a common point approximately 15 feet above grade. It has a slate roof that has broken and missing tiles of slate. The walls of the garage are constructed of terracotta blocks and a stucco exterior. And the pictures on the upper right-hand corner will show the interior of the garage with the terracotta blocks on the inside. They're unglazed, so if they can't handle the weather very well, which is why the exterior of the structure is stucco to protect it a bit. And then the picture on the upper right-hand corner is a better detail of that those terracotta blocks. The terracotta blocks are a major contributing factor to making the garage impractical to move, and why the application for total demolition has been filed.
And specifically with regard to the application that was made for total demolition, would you please go over the review criteria for total demolition per the Montclair Code, and how we thought that this fit in with the request for total demolition?
Certainly. When I'm going to speak, and looking at the review criteria for total demolition, I'm going to be referencing and speaking more to the Connolly-Hickey dated report review dated May 9th, 2023. So I'm going to review all of the criteria, but reference their report and whether we agree or disagree, and then expand upon that. So the first criteria, A, in summary, deals with the historic, architectural, cultural, and aesthetic significance of the garage. We're in agreement with the comments found in the review. They were very accurate.
And just to be clear, you're referencing Ordinance 347-142.1, demolition of historic structures?
Yes, we are, I'm sorry. 347-142.1.1E3.
Okay, thank you.
No. The second criteria, B, it's summarized. We have to describe its use and intended use, and the continuation of its what its designed use is. And we're generally in agreement with the comments found in the review. However, the intended use of the structure was as a garage. The proximity of the garage to the house and the steep sloping topography from the house to the garage, or from the garage to the house, made it impractical and continues to make it impractical to be used as its intended use. So we believe that it can't be used as its intended use as a garage. Review criteria C summarized importance to the township and the removal being detrimental to the landmark district. We're in agreement with the comments found in the review. It appears that the report or the review performed by Connolly and Hickey, they flipped D and E, so I will just refer to a description of what they referred to and then comment. So I'm going to call D, the extent to which its retention would promote business, create new positions, stimulate interest and study in architecture, and make the township more attractive and desirable place to live. We are in agreement with the comments found in the review where Mr. Tinkham was a prominent figure within the township, and the garage represents a transition from horse-drawn vehicles to automobiles. It is my position that the proximity of the garage to the property right-of-way along Park Street, which is nearly 180 feet away and over 20 feet below the grade of the property along the property public right-of-way, results in a structure that is neither visible nor an integral feature to the lives of the general public. The only way to experience this structure is to enter the private property and traverse the farthest corner of that private property. And the picture that you have, one of the photographs in the lower center of the exhibit shows a picture in February where no leaves are on the trees, no underbrush, and because of it being 20 feet below the right-of-way and a wall and a fence and the trees, you really can only see just the very tip of the roof. Okay, moving on to the review criteria E, which is summarized the extent to which the old unusable or uncommon design, craftsmanship, texture, or material that it could not be reproduced or could be reproduced with great difficulty. While not readily available, structural terracotta tile can be commissioned and can be found either used or brand new. Given the size of the structure and limited amount of material needed, this structure could be reproduced using similar materials for the terracotta walls and the slate roof. The structure could be duplicated in both design and materials. And I'm just referencing the criteria and responding to the criteria that we've been asked to respond to. Criteria F, the probable impact of its removal upon the ambiance of the landmark district. As previously stated, the structure is not an integral part of the lives of the general public due to its location on the site and the site topography. As such, the impact will only be on the owners of the property and not have a negative impact on the ambiance of the landmark district. Section G, structural soundness and integrity of the building and structure. The comments found in the review focused on architectural integrity. They spoke of great depth about architectural integrity and not the integrity as it relates to the soundness of the structure, which I believe was the intent of item G. So with that in mind,
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? Could you repeat that last point you made?
what I'm making is that the review focused on the architectural integrity of the structure and not what I believe review criteria G, which leads with structural soundness and integrity. And integrity describing the structural soundness, it's, in my opinion, not the architectural integrity. Did I answer your question sufficiently?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. The exterior walls are in good condition, even given the age of the structure. The roof is in need of significant repair or replacement. There are 4 windows that appear to be weather-tight and in good condition, but will still need to be restored should the structure be retained. So I'm just looking at the structural integrity and not talking to the architectural integrity, which that review went into great depth. In the review, the report is silent. The review is silent to criteria H through J. Criteria H describes whether the structure is currently a threat to the public. There is no threat to the public given the location on the private property, my belief. Criteria I relates to the feasibility of structural rehabilitation. As previously stated, the materials could be found to both rehabilitate the structure or have it reproduced elsewhere within the district. There's some discussion and examples where the materials relate to the Applegate farm, and you mentioned it today with a silo. While it does, the contention could be they're so far apart with a subdivision in between, it's really hard to relate to the two. Perhaps just a similar structure would relate better in the Applegate farms than a couple 100 miles, 100 feet away, 500-600 feet away. And then the last one refers to the interference with a charitable purpose if demolition is permitted. I don't know how to make a comment on that as it relates to charitable. I don't know what the charitable things might be there. And I think that's all I have.
Yes. So long and short of it, we decided that we reviewed this application, we looked at this site, we thought a subdivision was appropriate. Frankly, we could probably accomplish it without a variance being requested. We thought that the development proposal that we put forward with 1 variance was appropriate. Obviously, we have the demolition permit request for the existing garage. We thought total demolition would be appropriate. We certainly defer to this commission as far as that's concerned. But we still do think that subdivision of this property is appropriate. We do intend to retain the entire character of the existing dwelling there and whatever remains behind the dwelling. I'm sure some features may be lost in the subdivision and the construction of 2 additional dwellings. With that being said, we do think this is an appropriate subdivision, appropriate use of the property, and we leave it up to the commission to let us know what they think of the development proposal, and we'll take any recommendations the commission may have.
Okay, does that conclude your testimony?
It does. I have no other witnesses. Again, I have Mr. Shubach here to testify to any questions that the commission may have. I also have the owner here to testify to any questions the commission may have. But that does conclude my direct presentation tonight.
I'm a little confused. You just said that, I think I believe in the application you're requesting 3 variances, of 2 for the depth and 1 for the width, the front width.
Oh, yeah, those are, the depth is an existing non-conforming condition. That currently exists. That's the current condition of the property. So, yes, we are asking for 2 additional lot depth variances, but again, those are existing conditions at the property.
Okay, I just wanted to be clear, because you just said that you only were going for 1.
Of course, but when you look at a property and you do go ahead and file a land use application, the existing nonconformities, to some degree, while we do request variances for them, they are existing conditions on the property.
Okay, so I'm open up to our commission to ask questions of the witnesses, and then if the public would like to ask questions, we'll entertain the public. So, Nick, do you have any questions?
Sure. I'm just curious, did you guys at any point calculate the actual slope of the driveway if you were to keep the existing garage from the curb cut?
We have, looking at the survey, and this would be spitballing it today without a scale. Handy. Turn off my phone. I can't use a calculator, can I? See if I can't turn it on real quickly. But the driveway, the driveway goes from where it goes through the gate, because there's a set of gates at the top of the driveway at roughly elevation 324, and the garage floor is 310. So we're going down 14 feet in 3 times 20, and 60 feet. So, thank you. It's 23% slope.
It looks like the curb cut's at 328. Is that not right? You'd be coming in at 328 down to 310.
Right, but that's
over what looks like
correct. At
140
328,
or 50
you're coming
feet.
through the curb cut, and you're really at a pretty level area for the driveway at the top. It's 327 in the center of the pull-out, the back-end area from the driveway. It's 327 when you, at the top of, and I'm calling the driveway, the difference between where the back-end area is for the the attached two-car garage. And if you look at the survey, it then immediately starts to dive down after that, as you have to go through a set of 2 gates, or a gate going down the narrow driveway down to the actual garage. And that occurs in 60 feet, where the top is relatively level. As you mentioned, you come through the gates through the stone wall at roughly 330, and the finished floor of the attached garage is 328. Goes down 1.5 feet, 2 feet. It's 328.9, so it's called 329. You're going down a foot. So the greater slope is from after you pass the 2-car garage down to the attached garage. And even at the bottom in front of the existing garage, it's flat. There's that section right in the middle there that's really, really, really very steep. So, yes.
So if we were to modify a new driveway all the way from the curb cut and cut down through the land, it's possible that we could get a driveway at maybe a slope closer to 12 or 10%. But it would be required to redo the entire driveway back to the curb cut.
Correct, and that would
Okay.
be something we would want to bring back and really take a look at. I would be hesitant to go and say yes while using my thumb as my measuring
Sure,
tool.
understood. Okay. That's it for now.
How much would it cost to repair the roof?
I'm not, that would be something I would be able to say.
Well, we typically want to understand the cost of repair versus the cost of demo. So I would like to understand that more. You mentioned that the materials can be reproduced. Mr. Connolly alluded to that as well, but said that that is uncommon. It's not necessary. I mean, have you seen these materials reproduced?
Yes, actually, I did a bunch of research, and again, ironically, we just had another project in the office that dealt with this exact product, and the information that we gathered says that you can do it, you just don't want to do it in large quantities because to do it becomes very expensive.
So that's problematic then.
It
Could be used to repair, say, if you were to demo the newer section and repair that segment, the gap that would exist from demolishing that smaller, newer segment?
Well, two things. First, I'm not considering the garage to be very large. This particular tile can go up to 4 stories, and the other example that we're working with, it's a large building with multiple stories. This is a small area. I mean, if you're even looking at the silo, which is probably uses 10 to 15 times more product, this product doesn't really have much. It relates to
But it would be
removing.
far more expensive than other options to replace the garage. And
Yes,
the other,
it would be.
And, we're talking about terracotta going back over 100 years on this site.
Yes.
I mean, that to me is also, I would say, of significant historical value, correct?
It was a product that was available at the time. As I mentioned, we see it.
So it's indicative of that time.
It is indicative of that time.
Yeah.
Between 1850 and 1950 was when that product was more in vogue and available to be used. You asked the question about the repairing the side where the addition is, I believe, correct?
Yes.
It appears to me that the addition was literally just stuck onto the side. Removing the addition would expose the existing exterior wall that it was before. There's still a window, and in fact, the picture that was there showed a window in the upper left-hand corner that's remained in place, that was once an exterior window, but now became a window between the addition and the existing garage as it stands right now.
Right, but for the majority of the original structure is still intact and sound, correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yes. Okay. And we agree that it would be impractical to move it, correct? Right, because you can't really move that terracotta structure, it'd be destroyed.
Correct.
We think that the retaining walls provide the historic context of how that garage was used as it relates to Applegate Farms, correct?
It's the remnants of a retaining wall. They're very small pieces of a retaining wall.
But it still gives you that context of how that structure would have operated?
Yes.
And there are other historic elements like the coal flue that Mr. Connolly referenced that are
Yeah.
still in good shape and on the structure itself?
It is, I make reference to that in the demolition plan as well, the application as well. I looked on the inside, I didn't see where it did anything other than it's affixed to the exterior of the building. I don't believe it's functional anymore, but it sort of serves more as a plaque than it is.
Which does provide, again, the original use and context for that, how that site would be used. Even if nobody is going to burn coal anymore today, but
No.
it is an interesting feature and an interesting callback to the history of that particular building, yes?
Correct.
Okay, and then I did have another question I wanted to ask. Oh, the use. So perhaps it would be, somewhat difficult to use it as a garage, but it's still, it can be adaptively reused, correct, for storage and other, and just maintaining the context of the site, you can still use the garage for other purposes.
Could it be used for other purposes? I suppose. My response to and my testimony was dealing with and answering that criteria. Could it still be used as a garage?
Sure, but it doesn't have to satisfy, I mean, in order to determine that perhaps this site is not appropriate for demolition, we don't have to satisfy every criteria. And these are all weighting factors, right? We're looking at factors to help us balance the issues, right? Balance the interests. So this site could still be used for other purposes besides a garage, correct?
The garage, the structure,
Yes.
once repaired with all of the roof and all of that, certainly it could be used for something.
The current state of the roof, is there water damage indicated inside the building?
It was ironic. I did look for that. The looks like beadboard on the ceiling. I didn't see a lot of that. But again, with the soffit sticking out, the water could run down. It's mostly along the ridges, run along the. There's some cracking, but it's mostly along where the gabled roofs meet and run up to the ridge.
Okay.
I didn't see significant water damage on the inside. I suspect that it is either being caught and channeled to another place and out of the building.
Okay. Thank you. Those are my questions.
Certainly.
Thank you. You mentioned it earlier, I just wanted to confirm. The two proposed dwellings on 2901 and 2903, those are just conceptual?
That's correct.
Okay. And...
Oh, they would, yeah, they're just conceptual.
Okay. But even with those proposed floor plans and the footprints, I mean, you've got 2,800 square foot footprint, correct?
I believe so, yes.
Probably around
Mhm.
4,500 GFA.
Between 4 and 4,500, probably correct for the square footage.
And they're conforming at least to the building envelope.
Correct, they are.
Even though 2101 is the smallest out of the three just because of the geometry of the site.
That's correct.
And then with in terms of the stormwater and drainage that was on the site plan, is that conceptual too, or is that?
It is
dictated by-
conceptual. It is
Okay.
conceptual, given the topography, where those types of things would have to reside.
Okay.
But they are conceptual in nature.
Okay. So theoretically, just because looking at the site plans, you know, the driveway and the retaining walls, you know, interfere with the proposed drainage system, but theoretically that could be moved if the house is shifted or redesigned in some.
The drainage that's shown on the.
Yeah, there's the, you label it as, yeah, the nyloplast yard drain.
Probably referring.
I'm looking on sheet. Sorry, I'm all lazy.
You
I
probably-
can't see it.
I suspect
the
you're referring
fourth-
to
fourth
sheet S2 in the sheet set?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, the Nioplast yard drain in the lot in 29.01, correct?
Correct.
Okay. That's to pick up the drainage in the, coming down between the houses.
But again, that could be,
It's conceptual.
Shifted.
It's,
Great.
these are best guesses based upon engineers that do this every day.
understood.
Mhm.
And then just picking up on what Mr. Graham said, you know, because the home's conceptual, the drain is conceptual, and I think looking at the building envelope, that proposed home could be shifted back, and the garage could be integrated as like an outdoor living space.
Could it be? One of the things that, when in laying this out on the site, one of the challenges is the front of the site is a little bit flatter than the middle of the site. So the houses were pushed right up against the front yard setback, giving the entrance the elevation, because we're already coming down from 329 to 325. We're already coming down 4 feet, and the finished floor of the first is 324. So we're coming down 5 feet from the street already. The further we go
Further
back,
back, yeah.
the lower that will be.
Okay.
And it's just trying to balance the two.
Understood.
And the greater the impervious coverage will
And that
be,
was
obviously,
my
because we have to
other
drive the
question.
driveway. Yeah, so
Let's say we didn't shift it. How does maintaining the garage, how does that impact your impervious?
it
Would that
increases
require
it.
Yeah, it does, but does that push you over variance threshold? Have you done those calculations?
We have not.
Um,
Although I will say, one of the things, the house width, in trying to, the sizes of houses actually have grown. I think everybody's seen that. Everybody wants a bigger house. In order to get a house that's viable to be sold in this area, you're looking at a 4,000 to 5,000 square foot house, 4,000 square foot house. That's 3,500. Oh, yes.
May I ask, what do you, are you just postulating that for,
Yes.
you know, new people, or have you actually, or are you saying the houses across the street, the square footage?
No, it's just in general, the houses that we've been designing, those are the sizes that people have been looking to put in place. Not necessarily here, but in general, it seems like people are looking to put larger houses. The problem is the width of the lot being, what do we have it at here? 60 feet, I believe. It's hard to get a house and the driveway around the side of it in that tight of an envelope or an area, that's all.
Question, lot 30, do you know what their front yard setback is? I know that it is indicated on figure 1.
Lot 30.
Yeah, they have,
Oh, yes, because
The
the porch
neighboring-
sticks way out in front of it, and just, you know,
Yeah.
the
Is that
setback
enclosed
is
porch?
30 feet. Excuse me?
about 30 feet?
Yes.
Sorry, is that, can I just ask, is that
Oh,
the
that's-
house next door?
Yes, the
Yes.
existing house next door.
I was just going to ask, are we doing both the, I was just keeping my questions to the,
Garage.
to the
Yeah, I think
garage.
we're just doing the
Just do the garage.
So don't ask
But some
the,
of the site plan.
I
Right.
gotcha.
questions
Just wanted to
relate
make sure, yeah,
The necessity. for
absolutely.
the demo.
Okay.
Do you have any other questions?
No, that answers my questions, and the rest are just comments.
So my question is, you testified that the garage was impractical to move. And one of the, in our ordinance is that it be offered for minimal amount. Have you or the owner reached out to anybody to advertise that this is available?
to my knowledge, no one has reached out to anyone to try to sell the garage.
Or move it? Sell it, right.
Sell it or move it, right?
Okay.
And if this commission decides that it should remain, that's okay with the applicant. We can redesign the site around it. I appreciate the commission's, comments, and if the garage is that important, we're certainly willing to keep it. We thought in the development plan that it was better to demolish it. We thought it was in bad shape. We didn't realize it had historic character, but it sounds like here tonight, the, commissioners may prefer to keep it, and
Well,
that's okay with us.
I'm surprised the windows are still intact. That's usually the first
As
thing
well.
to go.
I think the 2-foot soffit it helps it. It doesn't get hit with rain very often.
Yeah, it makes the, the design of the property a little more difficult, but certainly it's something that can be worked around.
Okay. And so you mentioned that the tile, the terracotta tile, and you're an architect, is there any way that you, and I'm asking you to improvise maybe, use that to the advantage of this this historic component within the context of keeping it and going with that as, an adaptively reused building?
From an aesthetic perspective, it's very colorful on the inside. We have multiple colors occurring. From the outside, it's just stucco. It's really in really good shape. I was surprised at
Yeah.
how good the exterior stucco was. The interior, there are some broken pieces chipped here and there, but if that's what the flavor of what your style is, certainly. Some people like
So
brick
cr-
wall, and some
creative
people don't.
architect would be able to, yeah, or an architect would be able to use that, manage to incorporate that into a,
If that was the design style that the client wanted, certainly.
Right.
An architect could, yes.
okay, all right. So it's not a foregone conclusion that it's in a derelict building?
No, the walls themselves are in really exceptional shape for 120 years old, 110 years old.
Okay. Thank you. So Jerry, questions about the garage?
Yeah, I have some questions.
Yes, sir.
I want to make sure as to the criteria, A, which significance did this have? Was it historical? Was it architectural, cultural, or aesthetic?
I'm not the one determining whether it had historical significance.
No, that's why I'm asking. What about architectural? Does it have any architectural significance?
When I look at it,
Jerry, Mike.
Mike? But Jerry.
I'm sorry. Did it have any, I'm trying to find out what kind of significance, if any, this building has.
Well,
And
I think our consultant addressed that in Tom's report.
I understand that. I wanted to address it from them. I wanted to ask them what their thought is on it, because I see it as potentially only historically significant, not necessarily architecturally, culturally, or aesthetic.
correct. The review labeled it as colonial revival style in the report that was submitted by Connolly and Hickey. And while it is, in my opinion, the size of the structure could be duplicated easily. There's two materials here. There's the stucco tile, and there's a slate roof, and 4 windows. It is a small enough structure that it could be duplicated somewhere else with relative ease without dealing with ornaments, and it's not a Victorian style where you have to preserve plaster and pull it off the ceiling. It's tile and a slate roof. And the style wouldn't be difficult. It's a half a day's worth of precise measuring to put it back. And as it was mentioned also in the report, and I think it was the report from Mr. Schiavetti.
Civilian.
Thank you. I apologize. That the doors, the original door, and it was on the picture, the original door was a one large door, and it was converted at some point to be 2 garage doors. And you could see remnants. When I was there, I thought I saw remnants of where they widened the opening. And if you looked at the pictures that we compared, you have the original building, and then you have the wider two doors below it.
But can I just interject for a second? Because we just went through the questioning, and I think we agreed that the building itself is historic because of the time period. It's historic because the materials call back a specific period of building. It's historic because of the context that it sets out for the site. It gives the original positioning of the garage. It calls out the retaining walls that indicate how it was contextualizes how it was used with Applegate Farm.
Right.
So I think we've established that it is historic
Yeah,
on
I want to
multiple
get
fronts,
to
correct?
my questions.
Jerry, I just want to confirm that.
Yeah, no,
That's
I
correct,
understand your
right?
comments,
Yes.
but
Now, I asked if I'm correct, that we all agree that is that correct?
It was correct in when we discussed it.
Thank you.
When you're questioning, yes, sir.
Thank you.
second is built as the garage is currently located. Is that conform to the setback or side yard specifications next to lot 30?
No, it does not.
What is the actual setback or separation applicable to between that and lot 30?
Looking at it, side yard setback, 6 feet
And this is only 3 feet?
Based upon the survey, that's in the drawing, it's 3.04 feet at the closest point.
Okay. And you use the word, the masonry construction is not conducive to relocation. Is that it's not conducive to relocation on the lot or any place? In other words, once you try to move it, no matter how far, you're likely to destroy it?
I've never done that type of thing before, so I'm going to be, I don't want to go too far with it, but once you take it apart, it was more from the standpoint of the taking it apart would be difficult to do. The transporting of it is transporting, you can, you know.
Okay, and finally, with the design that you've laid out of a house of, I don't know whether you said it was 3,500 square feet or 4,000 square feet. Is that, as laid out, unsuitable to have a driveway to go back to the garage? In other words, the driveway wouldn't be sufficiently wide, or it'd be too close to the adjacent lot 30?
A little bit of both. The width of the house makes it difficult to get to the rear of the house with a driveway.
Okay.
And the grade.
And the grade, correct, as was pointed out.
Okay, and the materials that we reproduced, from the outside, it looks just like a stucco garage.
Correct.
And it has nice slate on the roof, but
Yes.
other than that, it doesn't look significant. People don't necessarily know what the interior structural material is made from, so that may not even be relevant for us. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions from the commissioners? Otherwise, we'll open up to questions from the public. No? Is there anyone that would like to ask a question?
Is this just about the garage, or can we ask a question about the whole project?
Let's just deal with the garage now. If you would state your name.
I'm sorry, it's Carmel Lockman, 26 Walnut Street.
Carmel, is your mic on?
I should know this, right? 26 Walnut Street, Carmel Lockman. I wonder if I can read my writing. So where is the tile that supposedly is the same as the silo in the Applegate Farms?
In the
In the
interior.
inside?
In the
Right,
interior.
okay. And the garage is all the way at the corner, right, of the lot? It's all the way down at the corner of the proposed lot. Is that correct? Yeah, because I didn't see all this until tonight. It was hard to look at that with the lights on. And I would like to pick up on something that Mr. Graham said. So this house, will it have, the house that you're proposing, will it have a significant backyard?
With the garage being demolished?
Yeah, let's just keep the garage there. Would it still have a significant backyard? I'm thinking, I'd like to pick up on what Mr. Graham said. It's
Oh, an
Do we have any additional
alternative.
plans? We had
Well, it
10
seems
copies.
to
Do we have any
me
additional plans?
if you
That'd
have,
be 12.
if you have a large, it could be a shed, a garden shed. People pay, $4,000 for a Home Depot shed. I'd rather see something like this that is a lovely structure that, from what it seems to be saying, is that it's perfectly sound with a new slate roof. And slate roofs, once you repair them, last forever. They're
Adaptive
very,
reuse,
right?
Adaptive reuse, Mr.
Adaptive
Lockman,
reuse.
Yeah, but I mean, a garden shed, how big is it? What is the square footage of it?
It's roughly 24 feet by 24 feet.
Oh, it's big,
Oh,
yeah,
it
yeah,
can fit
yeah.
2 cars.
Yeah, yeah, but as a garden shed, that's a really nice size if you're, keeping equipment in it, using it a potting shed or something. So, what did I want to ask? So the other thing is, you said that you haven't worked in Montclair before. The developer has not built anything in Montclair before. It strikes me, if I were looking at a new,
No,
sorry.
I've never appeared before the boards before.
Well, that's you, but the developer hasn't built anything here before and is unfamiliar with the town pretty much?
I didn't know about that. Yeah.
You've done stuff in Montclair? You're familiar with Montclair buyers? Yeah, it would strike me that someone who was buying this new house would really think it was kind of cool to have a garage or a shed, a structure on the property that tied into Applegate Farms, which is an iconic building in Montclair. So from that point of, from a buyer's point of view, I would think, wow, this is really nice, and it looks like, you know, Applegate Farms tiles in the inside. Maybe the outside doesn't, but whatever. And I just, you know, you said something about the trend is to build huge homes. I don't think that's true anymore. Yeah, that's, what else? Yep, that's all. I would say thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to ask a question? Do you need a document do you want to refer to? The new one that they, okay.
It hasn't substantially changed, has it? Well,
No.
okay. My name is Frank Rabacki, 398 Upper Mountain Avenue, here in town. You had indicated that if this project was subdivided, that you would come back, you would be willing to come back before the HPC for review of the designs for the house, right?
We anticipate we will have to, yes.
So you would stipulate to that, that would be a condition?
It usually is.
Okay,
But we
no,
would certainly
I
stipulate
just
to
want to
it.
make sure, because
Yeah.
the question I have is, if you do subdivide this, there's some question in my mind whether the new properties would also be part of the historic district or the historic resource. Because we had a case not too long ago where it was determined what was the original outline of the historic resource, and that determined whether it was going to remain an historic resource, even though it was a new lot. So have you, okay. I'm just curious, only because we're talking about, and I don't really care about the lot right now, I'm just getting to the garage. You have two lots, which are brand-new lots. You can, wait, I'm sorry, you're going to subdivide and you're going to create two new lots.
Correct, 3 total.
So, and they're basically blank slates, except for the historic pieces that are still on those lots, correct? Essentially.
Yeah, essentially, yes.
And
Okay.
potentially a garage.
Okay, so you have flexibility. It's not like you have to work around a lot of things. I'm not clear what you have to work around.
The greatest thing that we have to work around is the slope of the site, 30 feet in.
No, I'm not worried about the slope so much. I'm worried about, are there other historic elements here that are conditioned besides the garage? Because you have mentioned several of them. And if those are going to be identified as needing an additional review if they're removed.
Well, I think, I would say yes, because especially the wall garden, the wall garden, the garage, and then the different.
There's several other things besides the garage here that we're not
Right.
addressing with this demolition permit. And so my question is, how do we address the demolition of historic elements on the
Well,
I
I
believe
think
we're
they're-
going to get into that next, right? Chair?
Right,
Yeah.
they've just asked for demolition of the historic garage. We haven't,
So they can't demolition anything else until you guys have reviewed it?
Well,
right?
I think we were going to discuss that when we discussed the subdivision, Mr.
subdivision of the
Rabacki,
site,
but,
because the
yeah.
other elements are on the,
Because I have similar questions about.
Well, the
about- yeah.
subdivision, well, that's my question, because the
Yeah.
subdivision is irrelevant as far as the historic preservation part of it. Assuming they don't subdivide it, those historic elements are still there, and the question is, are they of significance, and do they have to remain? Whether they might change the subdivision just to add one property. They might change the configuration of the subdivision.
right, and that, Tom did touch upon that. I wish he was here tonight to speak to that, about the other elements, other structures within the property. But,
So that's a concern, because you've mentioned them, and I think they're important. Clearly, the slate roof on a garage in Montclair is an unusual feature, and certainly one that is indicative of the historic, the history of the site. As far as adaptive reuse, one of the things maybe you're not aware of, and I'll ask you if you are, is that Montclair recently passed a ADU ordinance.
I'm not familiar with that now.
Okay. Okay, so this is the type of structure, if it comes in at 550, 600 square feet, just for the internal part, the inside part is, and because of the slope of the property, would, to my mind, create a perfect adaptive reuse for a future owner, maybe not the next owner, but who might want to put a dwelling unit, an accessory dwelling unit, property. It would seem a shame to tear down a perfectly good garage, historic garage that might have potential use. So I'll just ask you to consider that. And lastly, the thing I'm concerned about the garage, and I don't want to go too far into this because it's really about the subdivision. Well, maybe I should just wait for the subdivision, because I think the driveway issue is, your demolition permit runs into the subdivision issue as far as the historic nature of the streetscape. So I'll wait. Is that right? Okay, thanks.
Following up on Mr. Rubaki's questions about the other elements like the fountain and the retaining walls, when I looked at the application, it only noted request to demolish the garage. So I think that's what the scope of this review is, and to the extent that those elements need to be reviewed, I think that a new application would have to be submitted or...
So I don't know the answer to this question, but I'm going to pose it to the commissioners. I would anticipate that the only demolition permit we need is for the garage. If any of those other structures were to be demolished, I don't know that that would require a separate demolition permit. I don't know that that's true, but that's a question that I have for the commissioners.
That was a question I had.
Yeah, I think our view would be anything that meets the definition of structure under the ordinance or the municipal land
I mean, we're
use
talking
law.
about retaining walls.
Yeah, that would be a structure.
A structure? Okay.
I thought we were even more inclusive in the demolition ordinance, that it was, it wasn't just buildings. We made sure of it when we revised that other historic elements would be included. In part, I think the horse trough at Lackawanna Plaza was one of the things we were thinking of. So it doesn't have to be a building in order for it to be an historic element of the property.
I appreciate the knowledge. That's news to us.
Is there someone else from the audience come up with it?
Hi, Deborah Moran, 10 Elston Road, Montclair. The longer I sit here listening, the more I realize this structure, which I have seen, I live nearby, would be, in this day and age, a perfect, everybody's working, many people are working from home post-COVID, an office, an art studio. It's a perfect size for, in terms of repurposing, forget about it as a garage or a potting shed. It's the perfect size to be repurposed for somebody who's creative, needs a work-at-home office, that they can go down there, do their thing. That's just, the longer I'm sitting here, I'm thinking, what a great way to sell an historic piece of property, or an historic building on a historic piece of property.
So do you have a question specifically for the architect or?
Have you thought about that kind of repurposing for this structure?
No.
Other than as just a garage, as a garage?
No.
Yeah, adaptive reuse.
Yeah, well, adaptive reuse as something other than just
Right.
modified and continue to be a garage.
Right.
No, we did not.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there anyone else that would like to ask questions about the garage? I mean, this is so interrelated that we have to, no, okay. So public questioning then is over. What should we do with this? Tom is not here to answer questions. But I think it's important that it goes into the record.
Mark it is just C1, Commission 1.
Or we could, it's long
long.
to, it's pretty long to read.
Yeah, that's, it was provided in advance, the applicant has it. let's just mark it and it's in the record.
Okay. And the applicant, you,
No objection from the applicant to
Okay.
marking the Connell and Hickey report.
and you predicated your remarks based on Mr. Conley's report as well?
Yes, I did. Specifically, where it starts with, actually on page 2, the criteria for evaluation are set forth as follows. That I definitely predicated my testimony on those comments.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You're welcome.
So then, why don't we open up for discussion before we have a vote? Mr. Giuliano?
Again, I feel like a lot of what we're talking about between the demolition of the garage and the subdivision itself are so intertwined. It's hard
Yes.
to comment about one without the other. In so far as to just using it as a garage, I'm not 100% convinced it couldn't be. The size is perfectly adequate for a modern two-car garage, and the driveway could be modified all the way back to the curb cut to, I think, probably a less than 15% slope, which is on the steep side, but it's not undoable. You know, there's many municipalities where 15% is the limit without a variance. Some are 12, some are 10, but I think it could be done. I don't see it as a hardship in that it's in a bad spot on the lot. It's in the exact spot where a detached garage would be on a residential property. It's not in the middle. It's not towards the front. It's in the back corner. The setback issues, they might need a variance, but I don't think it would be difficult. Typically, an accessory setback is much smaller than a principal building, so I don't know exactly in Montclair what the accessory setback is in this zone, but I would guess it's probably close to 3 or 4. 6? Okay. And, as far as getting a driveway in, I know that there's comments about how large the house should be. I mean, a center hall colonial or something similar has plenty of room to fit. If you have a 10-foot foyer, 20-foot rooms on both sides, you have a 50-foot house, then you have 30 feet left in width to get a driveway, which is plenty. You can have 15 on one side, 15 on the other, and it gets you a 12-foot driveway right through up to the house. So I'm not convinced that wouldn't work as a hardship on the property. If the garage is closer to the middle of the newly formed lot, then, I think it's a little bit more of a thing that we could look at, but as it stands, it seems pretty feasible to use it as a garage. And I love everybody's comments in the audience about using it as a separate accessory structure. It could be a pool cabana, it could be a potting shed, it could be a home office. So,
Thank you. Mr. Graham?
As we discussed previously, the demolition ordinance asks us to balance interests, to consider several factors. Without getting into all of them, I think this structure satisfies the criteria that it is historically significant enough to warrant denying the application for demolition. I think the historic materials, the context that it provides for how this site was used, the time period from which it was built, and the fact that it is in such good working condition, and even with potential damage to the roof, we're still not seeing any indication of water damage. I think it would be inappropriate to vote to demolish and lose a historic resource like this. So I am not supportive of demolition.
Yeah, I generally agree with the other comments, so I'm not going to repeat it. Other than I think the applicant's architect confirmed that a lot of the elements of Mr. Connolly's report supported preservation. There was a little bit of a dispute about the visibility with the right-of-way, but that's just one factor out of all of them. I think that there are a lot of different ideas about adaptive reuse that could make this project really special, and I would like the applicant to explore that. It doesn't have to be a garage, it doesn't have to be outdoor dining or an office, but it can be utilized, and it could be a really, really important selling point for this property. And with the retention of that structure, and again, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, going into the site plan, but, you know, maintaining that structure, I would support and would encourage the commission to recommend any variance that might be necessary, like an impervious coverage variance, that, you know, would be required because of the retention of that structure. I would also support a, you know, maybe even up to a 15-foot front yard setback variance for that lot because, you know, it gives more flexibility to the applicant to design a house and even reduce some of the impervious coverage with the driveway to incorporate that garage structure in there. So that's something that I would support, and I think it would be consistent with the neighborhood, given the, you know, 30-foot setback the neighboring property has. You know, it allows the homes to kind of, you know, have a gradual setback to what is permitted, because even, you know, lot 28, that's even farther back, so you have a nice little slope, so to speak, of front setbacks. Yeah, and that being said, you know, I think the garage is in great condition. It would be nice to maintain that, and it is historic.
Thank you. I agree with my fellow commissioners. I wouldn't be supportive in the demolition either, but I think it really speaks to the site itself has such a rich history, and we're so fortunate to have the photographic evidence that really speaks to that. The connection with Applegate Farm is very important, and originally Upper Montclair, or that section of Montclair, was farm and farmlands. And although the garage was built as an automobile, you know, to house an automobile, which you know, doesn't speak to farming as much, it really speaks about the evolution of the whole area and how cars came in and became very important. And I think that if, I don't know the square footage of the houses across the street. I know it's a very eclectic neighborhood. It's very eclectic. And I think with a creative architect, I don't agree with the, you know, the idea that you have to have a huge house. I don't think that draws people to the area. If you're familiar, up on the north on Park Street, there's a little enclave called the Who. Have you been in? Yeah. So that's Tudor style, but it's also, there is one big house there, but that's a newer house. I mean, I think when you look at the historic size of houses, you'll see that a smaller house would really fit into the area, which would then you'd be able to keep the garage. But I just think the garage is a very important element to that Montclair area. So, thank you. Jerry.
I would support the application. I don't think this garage has any real significance. It has some historical, but people don't normally associate garages with people. They don't normally say, this is the Tinkman garage, this is the Applegate garage. This is a building, garage was built different in time, different materials, doesn't look like it even relates to the same building, doesn't even look like it ought to be on the same lot. I don't see that it has a great connection, and I don't see that it has anything really worth saving. I think keeping it there, it doesn't conform, it's too close to the boundary, and it's a building that would just have to remain there so that people would have the ability to associate it with it, even though they won't be able to see it, except perhaps the person on Lot 30. Lot 30, they'll be able to see the garage. I think this meets all the standards, and again, it's all a judgment. You take into account all of the factors. I think this garage warrants being removed, totally demolished.
Okay.
So we'll make a motion.
Make a motion.
Yeah.
Jason?
I'll make a motion to deny the demolition.
Second.
Second.
Who was the
Call a
second?
vote.
Who was the second?
Mr. Graham.
I'll do a roll call vote. So the motion is to deny the total demolition permit. Ms. Bennett?
I agree.
Mr. Heinman?
Aye.
Mr. Graham?
Aye.
Mr. Sweeney?
No.
Mr. Giuliano?
Aye.
The motion carries.
Okay, thank you, Tommy. Okay, so the motion carried, so
So-
the demolition is denied.
All right, so let's move on to the subdivision.
Subdivision, right.
Is there any additional, I guess, testimony or comments?
We have no additional testimony, we have no additional witnesses, we've made our presentation together, so we're happy to hear your comments with regard to the subdivision separately. Any questions that you had, the commissioners have, obviously, we're here to answer.
Okay, so we'll start with questions about the subdivision, then we'll go ask questions from the public. Do you want to start this side? Questions
Yeah,
about the subdivision?
First question, when you subdivide it, will all of the lots, including the smallest lots, be larger than the existing lots on that side of the street? Or most of the existing lots on that side of the street?
They look like they would be comparable. I'm looking at it, oh, hold on, here it is. The lot 30 is 119 feet wide, lot 28 is 100 feet wide, and 27 is 100 feet wide. So these lots would actually be smaller than the lots in both directions.
But
So
the
these
square
lots would
footage
be
complies
smaller?
though, right?
I'm sorry, there was two questions at one time. I didn't hear one of them.
Go ahead, Jerry, I apologize.
Sorry, what was the question, sir?
So I think the first question from Commissioner Sweeney was, will the new lots be comparable to the surrounding lots?
They would be actually smaller than all of the lots on that side of the road. They would, on that side of Park Street, they would be larger than the bulk of the lots on the other side of Park Street.
And when we say smaller.
Gentlemen, I'm sorry, thank you.
Not as wide.
Not as wide.
Not as wide.
Not as
And
wide.
in terms of area, it would be,
I'm
it's okay if you don't know, I'm just curious. But
It's about, they would still be small, they would be larger than the ones across the street. The ones across the street are 190 feet deep, and these are 189. They're about the same depth,
Same.
but the ones across, I'm looking at in block, they don't have a block number here, that would be too easy. But it's lot 7, 8, 9, and 10.
Directly across
Directly
Park.
across a street are 70, 65, 61, 78, and 150 to 180 feet deep.
So the frontage is larger than across the street, it's smaller than on the same side of the street?
Correct.
Okay.
Now, with regard to lot area, the lots that we propose would comply with the minimum lot area for the zone.
Absolutely.
Second, have you designed the houses that would be placed on those other lots? Have those been designed architecturally?
They're conceptual. What we've provided in our plans are conceptual designs. We're certainly open to suggestions as far as the design of these properties. The way we've designed them is ultimately to eliminate any need for variances. So we've got driveways that go into a garage under, not a detached garage. We've done that to, reduce impervious coverage, obviously. So these are conceptual designs done to minimize the need for any variance relief, in fact, eliminate the need for variance relief. So we're open to suggestions from the commission, and we're happy to design the structures however Montclair decides that they'd like to see them.
Have you selected a architectural design for these houses, meaning are they going to be?
No, we have not. We have not this style, whether it be Victorian or whatever. No, that has not been decided as of yet.
Okay, so it could be open and it could be modern?
It could be just like the house next door, which matches nothing in the neighborhood.
Okay.
Right? But that's.
Those are my questions.
So I think one of the recommendations would be, based on that it comes back to us, which we've discussed before, prior. Okay. Why don't we, Jason, do you have any questions?
Yeah, just picking up on that comment about, the condition of them returning when they have the actual proposed development. I think that potentially solves the issue of the demolition of those other structures, because if they're coming back anyway, we can address the demolition then, and we can actually see the extent of what you actually need to demolish. So I think that issue is tabled for now, and we can, we only really need to address the subdivision.
But do we, Commissioner, because I'm just looking at the, it seems that we might need to address now what elements are going to be potentially demolished. I'm seeing stone walls written in here, and I would like to have a sense before approving anything of
Well, I would say because
what we're talking
it's
about.
conceptual. So
Yeah.
theoretically, they could subdivide and preserve everything if they wanted to.
Could they though, based on, I'm genuinely asking because I'm not sure. There's, well, that's right. I'll let you go,
Yeah.
Commissioner. I'll ask my questions next. Yeah.
Theoretically, I think they can, and just, I'm hesitant to address that here at this hearing, since they have not had the opportunity to look into the issue and present their case. Tom hasn't had an opportunity to look, so I don't really feel comfortable giving a yay or nay on the demolition without, everyone having an opportunity to really look into the issue. And I think that the fact that they're coming back when they actually do have a proposal, I think that would be the appropriate time to address demolition to the extent that there needs to be.
May I make one comment question? You were talking about the additional elements that are on the site. A little assistance in what would be considered an architectural or historical element. For example, the wall surrounding the garden sounds like it's a critical element of the history.
Well, likely, we would like our consultant to review it. So I think this is what I'm having an issue with.
Right.
If I apologize for interrupting.
No.
But I'm struggling with this as well because we don't have, I think we all agree that this lot was designed by Mr. Tangum, right, his gardens. He put in a lot of walls and walkways and things. I don't think we fully have an understanding of what the implications of a subdivision would do to those elements and which ones are actually historic without Mr. Connolly reviewing it.
And truth be told, from the applicant's perspective, we don't know what is actually going to be regulated and what isn't. So, I mean, we appreciate the fact that we're here to discuss the demolition of the garage. We thought that we were only here for the demolition of the garage. Now, the commission is explaining that there may be some other features on the site that also fall under the Historic Preservation Commission's jurisdiction, and we get that. But it's news to us. So we would also like some clarification.
So, for example, with Lackawanna Plaza, we determined what the historic elements were there. For the Bellevue Theater, we determined what the historic elements were there and that would be maintained, for any renovation or adaptation.
And that'd be helpful.
Yes.
Correct. And as talking about the wall along the front, but then as I went through the site, there is one section that has 2 stone steps, not connected to a wall, not going to, and the question is, are those considered? And that's, some feedback would be helpful, and
I don't know
for us
if
to go back
that's
to the drawing board and
anything we
redesign
could-
without knowledge of what is actually regulated is problematic from the applicant's
But
perspective,
again,
as you can understand.
if you do get the subdivision, you do have the opportunity to consult with Mr.
And that I
Connolly
understand,
and
but
Mr.
just understand
Sedillo,
from the
yeah.
applicant's perspective, coming back with an approved subdivision back to this commission for this commission to say, well, we don't appreciate the demolition of this particular wall or that particular wall, would put us back to the drawing board before the planning board. So we'd really like to cross as many Ts and dot as many Is before the commission as we can. And certainly one of those things would be to identify the historic elements on the site that this commission does have jurisdiction over, that we can then redesign our site around.
But I think that can
But
come.
to do it, I know it can.
That can come administratively before you come to the commission.
Yes, that'd be great, but it would also be great if it could come before we go before the planning board.
But
I
similar,
think,
I'm sorry.
let me just suggest that if it's a compliant application, once subdivided, it's not coming back here except for demolition of the other structures. So this actually has to be reviewed now
It has to be
because there may not even be the opportunity for the boomerang that you don't want to happen anyway. So it's going to have to be administratively determined what structures, or, you know, with the site visit and so forth, but what structures are going to fall within the demo permit jurisdiction of this body.
And then would a second application then be required for those
I would say
items?
so. I mean, the applicant didn't intend to bifurcate it, but that's really what's happening. It's just going to be another hearing on those that will then help inform the final design, because I think this body needs to assume, that may not be the case, but needs to assume that it's going to be a compliant application that will not have site plan review, and therefore there will be nothing to refer.
Right, so the discussion on them coming back to present the architecture of these new houses can't happen because
Yeah.
there is no
Academic,
application that
that's
has to be
academic.
filed with any of the boards or commissions. Because there'll be single-family houses that are exempt from site plan review. And even if they were compliant, they wouldn't go to the Board of Adjustment and they wouldn't be referred to you all.
But if they had,
And we can't require
if they had
them
a
to
demo
rec-
permit application, they would come back.
Well, I don't know who the "they" is in that sentence, but if there were a demo permit application, that always comes here, yes. I mean, assuming it's covered, but it is covered.
Well,
But the architecture of the proposed houses would not be something that's required. There's no certificate of appropriateness to be issued in this instance.
So are we doing, forgive me for even asking this procedural question, are we doing a certificate of appropriateness for the subdivision? No, this is a recommendation,
This is
correct?
just recommendation.
Just a recommendation. And I guess we would have to recommend, make sure historic elements are reviewed. I don't know how we.
Well,
It seems that the
identified.
applicant
Right.
wants that determination prior to even going to the
Yeah.
planning board so that they can get all of the total demolition figured out
Yeah.
before.
The long and short of it is, from the position of the applicant, the last thing we want is for us to be coming back before you guys with something that you'll disagree with, but that the planning board has approved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we're back before the planning board
Yeah,
again.
we-
Yeah.
Because obviously, the planning board will condition any application, any approval, should we receive an approval on the plans that we've submitted. Now, if we come back before this commission and you want some revisions to those plans, we'd find ourselves landing right back before the planning board.
Yeah.
And then-
So
And-
my suggestion would be actually to carry the subdivision advisory report or recommendations, have them come back next month after the other structures are identified with a demo permit, if you want a demo permit, for those other structures or whichever structures, are in their way, so to speak. They will obviously advance their design somewhat, even though it's still conceptual, because they'll have to think about these structures. And then you'll just be dealing with technically the demo permit on the structures, but you'll have a more advanced discussion and understanding of the subdivision that you're going to be commenting on.
While I absolutely agree with your perspective, what I do disagree with is while we're here, frankly, the subdivision lines aren't going to change. So, I mean, any comments that the commission may have with regard to where the subdivision is proposed, that's a little bit different. Now, the structures on the sites can be relocated, but I would imagine the subdivision lines are going to remain relatively consistent because
But
the
that was
lot
my
area and
question,
the
that
lot width, et cetera, et
There's,
cetera.
nothing would change, but you would need to get additional variance relief.
Well, what
if
we
you
would
wanted
do,
to
but
move
not for the
things.
lot, not for the location of the lots, the size of the lots, the width of the lots, the
No.
depth of the lots, that would remain. The only thing that we change, based on the conversations that we're having, is location of the footprint of the building, setbacks, accessory structure,
Yeah.
obviously the garage. So that all would remain the same. So any conversation that we could have with regard to the location of the subdivision lines, and any comments the commission may have with regard to that, we'd like to hear that tonight, just because it would help us moving forward with revising our plans. Obviously, we do agree to carry, and we do agree to come back and request a demolition permit for any additional retaining walls or any other regulated structures identified by your experts that require review if we do intend to demolish them. With that being said, we would like to hear any comments that you do have with regard to the subdivision, the size of the lots, the location of the lot lines, et cetera, just because it would help us in
right.
redesigning the site if redesign is necessary, so we can redesign in one fell swoop
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to doing it in a piecemeal fashion.
So I do respect where you're coming from on that. I just want to put it out there that because of the history of the site and the design of even the landscaping and the structures by Mr. Tangham, not understanding the impact of this building very much changes whether we think it's appropriate or not to even subdivide, right?
Do you mean the building, or do you mean the
site.
Structures,
The
structures,
site,
structures.
structures.
I understand.
It does impact the analysis of whether it is, in my view, of whether it's even appropriate to subdivide.
Understood.
Are we really, going to, because one of the major elements of historic preservation is context, historical context. And you want things to be in their original context. And this subdivision could potentially damage the context of the site and it's in its original form. So that's stating that. I don't know if anybody has an opinion about whether
Yeah.
we should move forward or not.
I have a question. Looking at A2, what you've identified with those green lines, those are all
Right.
of those
That
structures,
was my-
right? So,
No, I think those are to be demolished.
That's
that's what
correct.
they're
Those are the
proposing
one-
to demolish. So that's,
Right.
aside from the garage, all those other green lines are elements that
the
they want
elements
clarification on.
Demolished, moved, I mean, when you're talking about a stone wall, those would be more able to be moved or modified to fit in with the site. For example, there's on lot 2901, I'm going by memory, there's a couple green lines on there where walls extend across the lot line from 2902 into 2901. And then we also call for a retaining wall running along the lot line to accommodate the contours and a change in topography. The wall elements could be that new wall. So it's not removing it from the site, it's redesigning and reusing the components to generate a wall that looks similar to the wall right next to it.
So I have a suggestion, and we can table this until we get through some more of the questions. But I mean, I think what I would like to see then is, let's take a 5-10 minute recess. You can kind of take a look at some of the materials and then just give a presentation on A2 and your photo log, and then you can kind of walk us through what you propose in terms of removing or reusing all of these different elements you've identified, and maybe we can provide some comments then.
In fairness, we're gonna have a conversation anyway, but part of the reuse of the elements that you're speaking about, and I'm gonna look right at the garden wall in the front, is that the garden wall, that is the element that we're trying to determine as being historical. So if the house were to be placed, making something up here, 2 feet inside of that wall, the garden wall still remains, there's a house inside the wall. The historical element has not been modified.
You're speaking of the brownstone wall, or the
I'm
wall
sorry,
garden?
The wall garden, I'm sorry.
wall- okay.
That had the fountain that's no longer there, that, yes. It's just the question of the elements, do they have to remain as their current function, or they could function as something else? For
There-
example, could that garden wall, the walled garden, could that be part of a foundation? And I'm not suggesting that. I'm going to the extreme.
I think it depends on what you're proposing to do, or if it's feasible to move it and reuse it. But again, it's a difficult analysis without seeing it, and also understanding that the context of the site being changed is an important factor, very important factor.
Yeah. And Ms. Bowery, if I could get your comments, but in terms of the jurisdiction, it's if you're not removing it, if you're not demolishing it, then I don't think that we have jurisdiction under demolition review. I mean, it might go into our comments to the planning board. But I think that would be the extent of what we could approve or disapprove. So if there was an adaptive reuse, if you were keeping everything in place, I don't think there's anything we could say or do about it except give our recommendations to the planning board. So.
All right, so any other further questions now? And if not, I'd like to ask the public has questions if they'd come up.
Well,
Please.
I'm sorry, Chair, if you could clarify, are we asking questions about the subdivision, or are we asking questions about how to proceed, or, because I would have some, if we're going to analyze this subdivision, I would have questions.
We
on it.
might have insight
Yeah.
into other issues from if the public asks questions.
So before we go into our questions on
Yes.
this? Okay, thanks, Chair.
Hi, my name is Eileen McGeever, and I live next door to 509. I'm in the very modern house, if anyone's familiar with that area. And the reason that it's very different than the rest of the houses around it is because the rest of the houses around it are beautiful apples, and my house was a 1970 orange, so I had to make it the best orange that it could be, because I couldn't compete with the Victorians and the beautiful Center Hall Colonials. This house is not a 1970 split level. This house is a beautiful historic house. We kept the wall in front. We have a 100-plus-year-old wall that we share with 509. We've repaired it numerous times. You know, I do think that the portrayal of this property hasn't been quite accurate. The pool is gorgeous, and it was always maintained, and it was always opened, and their grandkids would come and swim. So saying it was maintained up until recently, or whatever, I forget it, the wording, it was maintained until it was sold. Now it has a cover on it, and it's got some swampy water on it because nobody's been back there. The woods, all my neighbors, especially my across-the-street neighbors, call it, you know, our little woods. I know this isn't, you know, a historical thing, but I just also want to say there are families of foxes, families of deer, families of hawks that nest in the trees. The trees are not just like little saplings that, oh, it got a little overgrown. These are huge, mature trees that we've paid to trim properly so that nobody lost them, you know, because they're gorgeous. There was something else, you know, just talking about an appropriate, you know, saying that this was an appropriate subdivision. I kept hearing that phrase, an appropriate subdivision. These properties, these proposed properties are closer together than the properties across the street. Glenwood is here, a Victorian, a Center Hall Colonial, and then another much older house are here. They're spread very far apart, these houses. Then there's Glenwood. Then there are homes that are closer together, yes. But for half of the property, the homes there are much further apart. The homes on our side are much further apart. My house, yes, is very close to my neighbor's driveway. I didn't build it. I bought it, and it wouldn't fly these days how close it is, and it shouldn't be that close, but it was 1968, and I guess the people that lived in the house at the time, lived in 509, wanted it as far away as possible. But jamming a bunch of houses into that space is really going to bring down the neighborhood and change things dramatically. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is this questions or comments?
It's really a question.
It's really.
It's supposed to be
Arena.
What's that?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going with comment.
Okay, comments. This is a petition from the neighborhood.
Can you say your name and address again?
I'm sorry, Deborah Moran, 10 Elston Road, Upper Montclair, right around the corner. To the Historical Preservation Commission, we are writing to express our concern about the proposed subdivision of 509 Park Street, Montclair. As residents of this community, we strongly oppose this development and urge you to reconsider this project. This property is an essential part of our neighborhood. and we value its green space and natural beauty. The proposed subdivision would have a significant impact on the environment, as well as the quality of life for the residents who live nearby. It would also disrupt the existing ecosystem and potentially harm wildlife that call this wooded area home. Furthermore, the increased traffic and congestion resulting from this development would create safety concerns for the pedestrians, motorists, and our children in the neighborhood. The additional strain on our already limited infrastructure would also be problematic. We implore you to consider the long-term effects of this development and to prioritize the preservation of our community's natural resources and overall well-being. We urge you to consider putting a halt to this proposal. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Sincerely, 33 people signed. To whom can I give
Yeah, you
this?
can give that to me.
Mr. Sevilla, mark it as Objector 1.
Objector
And
1.
we'll put it in the record
Okay.
for what it's worth.
Thank you. Mr. Rebecca, you have?
Frank Rabacki. I guess you can mark me as objector too. But it's a referral, so, I mean, let's not get too serious here. One is a suggestion. I mean, clearly, you guys need a survey done. You need a survey done because you're doing a historic district anyway, and you need a survey done because this particular application is ahead of the curve. My recommendation is hire somebody just to do one special survey, have an official document. You always have a use for it after this application because you'll have the district, and see if you can allow some flexibility with the timing to get that survey done. It would probably be somebody we know that we have a history with, and we can do it pretty quickly as soon as, assuming Janice gives up the money to do it. But my concern is the lot widths. And just so we're all on the same page, the zoning here is for minimum lot widths, not maximum. And there's no variance. You guys are compliant to the 80-foot widths. However, as people have pointed out, and I have a document here that's going to really drive this home, your lot widths are not consistent with the historic nature of the neighborhood. You've already indicated there are many properties nearby that are significantly larger than 80 feet in width. I'm going to let you see a document, and I know it's the first time you're seeing it, and you guys, I don't know if you want to pass it around, but the point of the document is really simply to graphically show where that neighborhood is from Mount Hebron all the way to Lorraine Avenue, which follows your commuter district area, along Park Street. And it shows two things: what the current minimum lot width requirement is for the township. Sure.
Here you go. Pen? We got a pen.
I don't need it.
Well, you need to mark it O2. It's your exhibit, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I didn't know how to give it back to you. Okay. And then the second part of that exhibit, it shows a study done by our planning department in the end of 2017, in which we used GIS information, and we documented. We went through the entire town, and obviously we did this street. And what came out of it was to improve the zoning aspect, the specific zoning requirement of a minimum lot width, and make it more realistic as far as what was there, what we wanted, and and how they should be grouped together. And what the document will show, the exhibit will show, I know you haven't seen it yet, but it will show that pretty much from Alexander to Lorraine Avenue on the east side of the street, the side with 509, is recommended to be a 90-foot width. It's not 80 foot as it is now. It's one of the few areas in this report that the planning department generated that said we should increase the minimum lot width because it's what's consistent with the neighborhood, and therefore it's consistent with the commuter district that you're going after. So to allow an 80 foot, that's the minimum. That doesn't mean they can't do a 90 foot, but what might have to look at as part of your reevaluation is when you say, we'd like to look at what a 90 foot would look like and what would it mean? Well, it'd mean we'd have to take that garage off the side of the house. We'd have to do this. We could put a driveway in easily, though, that could get back to the garage. It opens up a whole different thing. Plus, we get more even spacing, and spacing that's really in line with what we want for that neighborhood as a town. We've already recommended this. So I think that's something we should, you guys, not me, you should look at and challenge yourselves, because when you see these houses, these conceptual houses, there's a good chance it's not going to be anything like what you're envisioning. It could be very much, and no offense to the neighbor that was just up here, it could be, as you know, we have many houses where as long as you have living space above the garage, you can put the garage doors pretty much right on the setback line. And so you could have very impressive buildings right there on the setback line that are really defined by garage doors. And the neighbor herself just admitted that if she had her druthers, she wouldn't have the type of house that was built in 1968, but she made the best of the situation. Here we have a clean slate, and we're not getting into the design, but we have to consider, again, getting back to your point, and I think a lot of people's concern about the context. Are we going to see, is the potential there for a big, flat, two-story, or peaked 2.5-story building right up at the, whatever the setback is, front is 50 feet or something like that, with 2 garage? And it doesn't mean that garage configuration is not an ideal configuration. It works very well from a plan review, a site plan review, but the reality is a lot of times they put the turnaround areas in front of the garage. I mean, I had a dime for every house in Upper Montclair alone that had front yard parking. I wouldn't be here tonight. So, and that's something that you won't see. But it is something that, to the context issue and how you look at it, you should make allowances for any number of designs and look, and don't take the lot widths as a given. I think you should consider saying, maybe subdivision is appropriate as long as we have some kind of control, or the planning board is, and this is our recommendation to the planning board, to be particularly sensitive to this aspect and help not only the town, but help the historic part of this neighborhood in this district. So that's my comment. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other? All right. Public comment then is closed. Do we have any?
Chair, if I may, I just want to make sure that the record is complete, the Connolly report on the subdivision as well. The Connolly report of May 9th, 2023 on the subdivision should be part of the record on this body's comment on the subdivision, as it hasn't been mentioned in this part of the discussion, the board's consideration and discussion.
Yeah.
Yes, the final paragraph.
Right.
I'm sorry, was it a question? Did you ask me a question or just that?
I'm just making sure that the record reflects.
Okay.
Report is part of the evidence on the subdivision as well as on the.
Thank you, yeah. So are there any further questions? Or we open up for comment?
I have questions.
Yes.
So, I'm trying to think how to frame all this. So we all agree that Mr. Tinkham is a prominent member of the Montclair community, was a prominent member of the Montclair community, historic figure in town, given his relationship to Applegate Farm and for various other reasons listed in Mr. Connolly's report. I think we all agree to that. Yes or no?
Sure.
Yes? One of the important, I think one of the important historic aspects of this site, as I've mentioned before, is the context of the site, and specifically the way that Mr. Tinkham utilized the site. Wouldn't you agree that the retaining walls and gardening and the structures that he placed speak to the historic use, the historic character, and the overall, gives an overall picture of the importance of this wide lot to Mr. Tinkham?
I think what I'm hearing here is some conversation, certainly from Commissioner Graham, but from other members of the commission, that would like to have some more guidance potentially from their architect, from their consultant.
It's not just that. Specifically, I think even before we consult Mr. Connolly further, he recommended against subdivision.
Is the question, do you want us to commit to the fact that this is a historic property and Mr. Tinkham was a historic person? The answer is yes.
Do you also stipulate
we
that
stipulate.
the use of it as a garden with all the elements they put in is a historic element as well?
I couldn't speak to that. I don't know how they've used it. I don't have that information before me. That would be some information that I'd like to have from your expert.
Okay. And if we were to subdivide this, it changes the overall character of the site, correct? Because you're no longer looking at this large garden that was important to this prominent figure in our community, and you're essentially reducing this lot to the home and the pool, and we're forgoing all the other work and care that was put into the I guess the
site as a whole.
The site as a whole. Thank you, Chief.
I mean, the answer is yes, but wouldn't that apply to any other property?
No,
anywhere?
I don't think so.
It's
And
what's
the
special.
reason why I don't think so, and I can get into this more in the comments, other properties don't have the same historical connection to a place like a prominent figure, a prominent, well-known business. It's getting late, for lack of a better word. The Applegate Farms is an important part of this community, and all of this entire site ties to a larger sense of community, right? So that's why certain properties, I'm not against subdivision as a rule, but I think on a property like this, I have significant concerns about subdividing a property that has such rich history
Despite the
Montclair.
fact that the subdivision may comply with your zoning ordinance.
Correct, but it might not comply with the, in keeping with the historic nature of the site. And I think that's the purview of this board, is determining whether the decisions we make, how that's going to impact the history of this community, right? And I think subdividing a property of that significance is a real concern.
Yeah, and I certainly appreciate the commission's concern, but just a question of jurisdiction, and that may be a question to your attorney.
We don't have the authority to bind the planning board's decision. We have the ability to make a recommendation to them, and it doesn't have the weight of law, but it does, it can impact their analysis. So.
Understood.
And I think piggybacking on that, I think we're in a difficult situation jurisdictionally as well. This is not I'll speak into the, sorry, Tommy. This is not a historic district at this point. It was just identified, correct?
Mhm.
So, but
potentially historic.
It's potentially historic,
Right.
so it doesn't have the local protection, so.
But it is registered with
It's
the
a-
state. Yeah, it does have a state, I mean, it does have
Yes,
some.
it
has
has
some-
state protection,
Right.
but it doesn't have local protection. So I don't think the board could deny an as-of-right application, although it is seeking a variance, but the variance,
You're speaking of the planning
the
board.
planning board, in terms of, what we can realistically recommend to the planning board.
Well,
Because if the planning board can't deny the subdivision because it's historic, then, we need to be as effective as possible. We have to provide realistic recommendations to
Well-
preserve the historic
But wouldn't it be
elements. And what-
effective is to actually know what's there?
Oh,
I
yeah,
mean-
for sure. But what I'm saying is, if the only variances relate to, that one interior setback, then the most the board could do was impose a condition related to that requested variance. You can't use an unrelated variance to deny an as-of-right an otherwise as-of-right subdivision. So that's kind of what I'm struggling with.
So you're
And what Mr. Graham was saying is 100% accurate. The viewscape, the landscaping is part of the historic element, and we've utilized that in other properties that did have local protection, like the Montclair Art Museum, when they wanted to redesign the landscaping. That was a historic element in and of itself, even though they weren't touching the building. Lackawanna Plaza, the view shed, was a historic element. So, from a substantive standpoint, that's ripe for our consideration. It just, we don't have the jurisdiction on this particular piece of property.
So we're looking to protect the historic elements, the fountain, the wall, and other things
Yeah.
to the extent they're structurally. But the subdivision may be conditioned on preservation of the historic elements, although maybe not preservation, the physical location, but some other location on the property.
For some of the elements, I agree, Commissioner, but I don't know if we can guarantee that with all of them, that they would be able to be preserved. And I guess that would,
Well,
I guess that would trigger the.
I think that's where we do have jurisdiction.
That triggers the
in terms of
demolition
the
ordinance.
demolition.
Okay.
Yeah.
But in terms of saying, well,
Yeah.
we want to preserve the view shed, we want to preserve the garden as its historic use, so you can't subdivide, I don't think we can do that. But what we can do is make recommendations related to things that we can protect.
Well,
Well, that's
the
why we need
structure has to be
identification of
man-made, I
it.
think.
Absolutely.
If I may chime in on behalf of the applicant, I agree. And just so you know, this applicant, we want to comply with whatever's best for Montclair. There's no other way, but we do want to subdivide this property. Obviously, at the end of the day, the goal is to subdivide the property and to construct 2 new dwellings. With that being said, I think it may be an appropriate time to adjourn for this evening, and then to ask your architect, your consulting architect, to identify the historic structures on the site that
We would
may
do that
be-
as well. We would, right, we can
Right.
walk the site.
that we would then be able to have that report and then go to, our team and design this potential subdivision and try to preserve as many of those elements as possible, and then come back before this commission and show you what we've done. But in order to do that, we would all be best served, I believe, if we had some knowledge as to what those particular elements on the property are, because frankly, from the perspective of the applicant, we don't have that at this point in time. And we'd be happy to work with the commission, and I think the commission would be happy to work with us, as long as we had the correct information as far as what is going to be something that needs to be preserved.
I agree.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes, and I
think
think
that
that
makes
was Ms. Bauer's recommendation about a half an hour ago, that be
No,
carried. Yeah.
Madam Chair, I really appreciate the time, and I appreciate the comments from the public. It was all very helpful in our redesign, but certainly a report from Connell and Hickey that does
Right.
identify the particular historic aspects of this property that need to be preserved, or that the commission would want preserved, or has jurisdiction to request that is preserved, would be helpful to us.
And
Yeah, it's-
timeframe wise, when are you looking to have something in hand?
Obviously, from the applicant's perspective, the sooner is better. We're obviously incurring carrying costs on the property. We need a little time to turn over the plans, don't get me wrong, 2 weeks from when we get the report from Connell and Hickey, but the sooner the better, obviously.
Well, I agree with that. I think that, because I feel that we can't really make a determination until we have that in hand.
I think that covers
Understood.
our issues of concern. Yeah.
So I would agree with that.
Identification and coming
So,
back, yeah.
Tommy, can we carry to the next meeting, and then in the interim,
We
Mr.
can.
Connolly can
So
provide
just
a
to-
supplemental report?
so I understand, we're gonna have Tom and his firm determine what structures are subject to this,
Subject to
to the demolition.
Correct. If they are to be demolished, they would be subject to a demolition permit, which would bring us before this commission. That's correct.
Okay, so I'll communicate that to Tom and see when he can get out there, and I'll keep you guys
Thank you.
in the loop.
That would be helpful, and as applicant, we would certainly request that adjournment to the next meeting of the Historic Preservation Commission to allow time to have that report prepared and for us to potentially revise plans. Hopefully, we can revise plans in time. If we cannot, then obviously we'd request a further adjournment, discuss among the team, revise the plans, and come back before this commission with a plan that preserves as many historic elements as we can, so we can have an informed discussion about this.
I think that's great.
Yeah.
I think that's wonderful that you're willing to work with,
Of course,
with us.
absolutely.
And I think that, seeing what's there and hearing from neighbors that it's really an oasis, really, and in that neighborhood. So I think it's extremely important that
We have many design options. You just got to give us a direction, and certainly, we've identified these structures, but we don't understand which of them are something that the commission would want to preserve, and the commission has jurisdiction over as far as demolition is concerned.
You know what would be helpful, and I know that the photographs are on the Montclair History Center's website, but the original photo album, which are the things that, it's from those photographs that you can really get a great sense of what's still there, actually. So, yeah. Oh, great, that's what we need. That's exactly what we need. Okay. Did you submit that?
No, I downloaded them for my own edification I downloaded them for my own edifications to understand the site better.
Okay.
And in looking at it, and part of the analysis, looking at it, the site went through multiple changes. First, it was vineyards, and then it didn't have the walled garden. It had a fountain, but it wasn't the fountain that he constructed for his son who died in World War I. So when we look at it from a historical perspective, it's what area or what point in time are we trying to hit? And I sort of, from an architectural perspective, what are we trying to achieve here? I'd like to be able to grab Mr. Tinkham now and say, what would you have done next? Or what would you say, you know what, I put that wall up just because my dog didn't want to jump, because that dog, by the way, Bobby or whatever, that dog was jumping all the time. I put it there because I didn't want the children to go down the slope or whatever. And it was temporary, but because it's there now, it's permanent.
But if you have some elements of that nature and things you want us to consider, I think that would be helpful as well.
Right.
Obviously, we'll try and do our due diligence if
Please.
you can do the same.
Yep.
Right.
And
I
we'll
think if
try
we're
and-
working from the same playbook provided by your consulting architect, that'd be helpful to all involved.
Thank you.
All right, I think that concludes.
So no new notice is required on the subdivision, because
We
there's
did
no
not- we-
really
yeah,
anyway.
We didn't notice.
Yeah.
We're not before the planning board yet. This was our first step, so we haven't noticed. We haven't been scheduled for a
Okay,
hearing before
fine.
the planning board, and to my knowledge, no notice was required for this hearing.
Okay, but there would have to be an application for demolition on the structures, should you go that way.
Correct, but I was hopeful that we would get that report first and
Yep,
determine what that
absolutely.
application should consist of.
I understand.
Because looking at the photographs more in depth, I think that the owner, Mr. Tinkham, was really responding to gardening influences that were happening at the time, like the popularity, the walled garden, and there were, the trellises with the grapevines, and even the Glaston Conservatory on the side of the house. There was a picture of it in
Right,
that.
and he was reacting, you gotta remember, like Cape May, they were reacting to the fact they didn't have air conditioning. So they built outdoor areas and porches with awnings to give themselves greater relief from the heat in the summertime. But that was reacting to the time and what they lived, and that's where we struggle with anything relating to trying to relate historical architectural features into our current day. They were perfect. He obviously in 1900 didn't have a need for a garage, but in 1914 he did. He
Right.
added a garage.
Well, that's
But
why I
he-
mean, it evolves over
Correct,
time.
right.
Right.
And the site evolves.
Right.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. So we'll see you next month.
Thank you. We'll see you
Thank
next
you.
month, and we
All
look
right.
forward to getting the report from
Yes.
the consulting architect and going from there. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, questions?
Well, I just wanted to know, to Mr. Rebaki's point about getting some of these surveys done, it's unfortunate, the grant situation, but are there other pockets of money that we can pull from to do some surveys? And are there places we can prioritize? And, is there anything that can be done outside of grants to get funding to do more surveys?
We have investigated that, but they have very specific guidelines, right? I mean, the one that we looked at,
There's other grants that can be applied for. I'm not super familiar with them.
Right.
If the grant subcommittee wants to look into that, I'm happy to help put an application together.
right, like the Historic Trust has something.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Their
Yeah, if we can-
application procedures are different.
Well, that's a
but-
good point, though.
Request it from the council, too.
I was just going to say
Yeah,
that, and
I
if
mean,
we have
you
to make
can-
an appeal,
If there's something that we really need to
And-
have surveyed, we can.
and I think,
draft a
you know,
resolution asking for the funds.
I think we should do that. I think.
For this property,
I don't know.
This property already has
yeah.
a survey with the state, so it's getting a
Right.
new survey is not going to necessarily change
It doesn't change
any
the,
jurisdiction.
Yeah. I'm saying to cut this off from happening again, we should really consider
Yeah.
moving,
Well, we should-
moving as quickly as possible
Yeah.
to survey as many properties as possible.
and not
Well,
only
but they
that, but.
need to designate them.
Right.
We've
the
got
dis-
them surveyed. They-
The
they can
district,
designate them.
the district needs to be,
Yeah.
yeah, that's the catch-22.
Can we pass something now to say, please
Recommend.
designate them? Can we, send a recommendation to the council?
Designate them as local landmarks.
Yeah.
There has to be there's a whole nomination process that has to be followed, like we're doing with the Label Street District.
Okay, then let's,
Well,
go ahead, Jeannie.
Hold up a minute. That's not necessarily true, because the council can designate on its own under section 65.1 of the municipal land use law. So this body could definitely just pass a resolution, one page, a few paragraphs, and say, please designate as local landmarks the following as XYZ as historic districts. And they can do that. All they have to do is pass a resolution explaining, how it differs or why it differs from what's already in the master plan. And since I'm assuming you're talking about districts that are potentially identified, then really it's consistent with the master plan. It would just be explanatory.
And
But
those would be.
the council doesn't have to go through that whole process. It's only the planning board that has to go through that whole process for designation
Well,
and
I
get
didn't-
it
I didn't
into
realize
the.
that.
So, it goes to the planning board.
No,
Oh.
No, I'm
Janine just
saying-
explained it different, and that would
Wait.
impact the Oakcroft, Wheeler Street, the estate section, and the Upper Montclair Commuter District, Part 1.
It's also free.
Should we notice it and put it on next meeting if we can? Can we put
Well, we
something
have to
together?
get council people.
That doesn't
I
have to
thought-
be
but I
noticed.
thought we had to pass it.
We don't
I
have
mean,
to-
that's
just a
political. You have to
resolution.
Yeah,
have
all
a
we're doing
majority
is,
of the
all we're
vote.
doing is sending a recommendation.
Oh, we're sending
to
a
the
recommend-
council
okay.
say-
Well,
saying,
you're
"Please
passing a
designate
resolution, so
these."
we can put a resolution
Yeah.
on the agenda. I'll draft it, and
Yeah.
then you can consider it, make
Okay.
whatever
Let's do it
edits you want.
next-
I think
and that's
that's
it.
great.
Yeah.
And this is for specifically one of the districts, all of the potential districts? What are we talking?
Yeah, that's my question. We have 4 that we can do. We can nominate. Wheeler, Oakcroft, Upper Montclair, Commuter, and Estate. Those are the 4 that we've had surveyed.
Does anybody have a recommendation? Can we just do them all?
Yeah, let's just do
Wanna
all
just
of
do
them
'em all?
that have already been surveyed, identified, they're in the master plan.
Yeah, let's
We're
just
asking
do 'em all.
We
Can
might
you
just-
take
just-
action on these? And
Right.
then it's up to the council to decide
Yeah.
to do
Uh,
one,
Do we wanna do-
all of them or none.
I was going to say, if we send them all over at the same time, can they reject it because, we only want to do 3 out of the 4? Or
Yeah, they could do whatever they want.
do whatever they want,
It's
yeah.
just an ordinance.
could they pass 3 and say, we're going to approve, these
Yeah.
3?
They
Okay.
can do whatever they want.
Can we maybe talk tomorrow about like the notice requirements and things like that?
That was my
for-
question, yeah.
For that?
The
And how
notice
many-
requirements for city council?
The pro-
Yeah, I guess that's their issue, not
Sure.
ours, but
We can talk, you mean because?
I'm not familiar
because-
with this.
Sure,
with this.
let's talk about it tomorrow.
That'd be great.
I mean, it's a little technical, but, um,
And that would be the number of, within the districts, the number of structures, buildings. I know there's over 300 in Upper Montclair, 300 in the state. Oak Croft has 200, and Wheeler Street probably has 200. So, it's a significant number, to your point, Tommy, of notice, because then the owners have,
That's kind of my question. I don't know what the requirement, I guess each of the
Right.
properties would have to be noticed.
Well, if it's in the
I don't
master
know.
plan, it's a zoning change pursuant to a recommendation in the master plan, no?
I'm only familiar with the process as far as the HPC begins the process, I guess, or it starts here. And in which case, all of the property owners have to be noticed, right, prior to the hearing. But I don't know what the procedures are if it goes straight to council. So if we could talk about it, that'd be
right,
great.
let's talk about it.
but it's a good start.
Let's get the
in
ball
order
rolling,
to get
yeah.
people, a dialogue started.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way.
Absolutely.
Okay. June 9th, next meeting is June 9th. We have the opportunity, we're having, Lindsay's coming, right, Tommy? Lindsay for training session?
Yes, Lindsay, I never know how to say her last name. Starts with a TH. She's this, whatever Janine just said. She's
It's the 8th, not the 9th.
Oh, the 8th.
June
Is it?
8th, yes.
Well, I got nervous when you said the 9th because that's
I'm
a
sorry, it
Friday.
is June 8th. It's June 8th. Lindsay will be here, and she will be offering, one of the recommendations for the CLG is that we get examined for one meeting, but she's also offered to do a training session. So another requirement is that all commissioners attend. You've attended, I think you three have to come still, do one. But she'll do a training session prior to our meeting, correct?
Well, it will be, I think, I guess it'll be part of the meeting. It'll be an agenda item, but we could maybe put it at the end if there's other business.
Well, it sounds like we might be pretty busy in June, so maybe.
I can talk to Lindsay, maybe.
Ask the time frame that she needs.
Sure.
And then maybe we could start it at earlier, 6:30, 6?
Right, and then whoever hasn't done their training yet for the year, this will cover that, and you won't have to worry about it for the rest of the year.
Okay.
That's me, all right.
But I'll reach out to her and figure that out and let you know.
Okay, thanks. So that being said, may I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
All right. Good stuff.